Chapter 1468. Nianj immediately saw Qin sitting under the tree. However, he was standing there looking at his phone. She didn't know if it was because his phone suddenly rang when he walked there, so he stood there to take a look, or because he realized that she hadn't arrived, so he stood there waiting for her. But at least he was really there. Uncle Qin. Afraid that this was just an illusion, Nianj quickly said, "Help me, do me a favor. Let's go to the hospital first. We'll talk about the rest after your fever subsides." With that, Uncle Qin was about to drive away. "No, I can go to the hospital. Help me tell the boy standing under the tree that I'm taking leave today. There's no need to tell him that I'm sick. Just tell him that I have something to do at the last minute and ask him to help me keep the class notes. I'll come back tomorrow." Nianj felt that it was difficult for her to say such a long string of words. After speaking, she closed her eyes to rest for a while. Uncle Qin turned to look in the direction she was referring to. He thought to himself that when he passed by earlier, that good-looking young man seemed to be standing there. Why hadn't he left yet? He turned to look at Nianj and seemed to have thought of something. "Did you make an appointment with him here?" "It's not really an appointment." Nianj was not in the mood to explain. She just wanted to tell Qin sighting before he entered the school gates, but she did not want to say that she was sick. Right now, her mind was very confused. She subconsciously felt that he might be waiting for her and told him not to wait any longer. However, it wasn't easy for him to wait for her. She really wanted to see him. She felt so wronged. Her tears were about to fall. She pressed her face against the window and said weakly and helplessly in a hoarse voice, "Uncle Qin, please help me, go and tell him." Seeing her anxious look, Uncle Qin sighed. "All right, wait." With that, he got out of the car. Uncle Qin looked at the time again and remembered the time Nianj had just taken the fever medicine in case the doctor asked about it. He then walked all the way to the tree and saw that the young man had shifted his gaze away from his phone. He walked over. "Hello, I'm the Shi family's chauffeur." Qin sighting put down his phone and looked at him. "Our young mistress has something to do today. She might have to take a day off to rest. She asked me to tell you not to wait for her. Also, please help me make a copy of her class notes. She'll get it when she comes to school tomorrow." After Uncle Qin finished speaking, he felt that his mission was over. He turned around and left. Qin sighting did not speak at first. Then, he looked in the direction Uncle Qin had gone and the car parked not far away. He said, "There are only 100 days left before the college entrance examination. Why did she apply for leave?" Uncle Qin paused for a moment. Although he remembered that this young man seemed to be from the Qin family, Nianj was currently having a high fever. From his tone, it seemed as though it was unreasonable for him to ask for leave. He turned back unhappily and said, "She doesn't want to ask for leave, but who doesn't have urgent matters all year round? She's in the car." Qin sighting had already walked over. There was no extra expression on his face, but his voice was indifferent and firm. Uncle Qin was stunned. "How did you know?" Hearing his tacit agreement, Qin sighting did not answer. Instead, he looked at the car in front of him. If she wasn't in that car, how could she have known that he would be standing here waiting for her? Qin sighting walked toward the car. Uncle Qin quickly went forward in surprise. "I think it's close to your morning self-study time. You should enter the school. Is she sick?" Qin sighting completely ignored his words and changed the topic. Uncle Qin paused for a moment before saying, "It's probably the flu. She's having a high fever. Open the car door. Let me take a look." It was an indifferent and commanding tone. He was not discussing with him. Perhaps because the person in front of him was from the Qin family, Uncle Chin did not feel that there was anything wrong with his tone. However, Shirniange had just told him not to let him know that she was sick. Now, not only did he say it, but Chin Siding also wanted to see her. If he opened the car door, Shirniange would probably be very angry. She was already very sick. If I remember correctly, you're the little young master of the Chin family. After all, you're the young master of one of the 4 big families in High City. It's not good for me to offend you, but our miss doesn't want to see anyone right now. The little girl's condition isn't very good when she's sick, so it's understandable that she doesn't want to see anyone. You should enter the school. She originally wanted to force herself to come to school, but now that she's having a fever, she's a little dazed. I'll send her to the hospital right away. Uncle Chin's words were neither servile nor overbearing. Even though he was the young master of the Chin family, the Shi family was not a small character. Even if there was some ambiguous feelings between these young people, as an elder, he could not let Shirniange go when she was sick. Uncle Chin's words were neither servile nor overbearing. However, Chin Siding remained standing on the spot. His gaze was indifferent and cold. I'll just take a look at her. After confirming that there's nothing wrong, I'll leave. Seeing Chin Siding's seemingly indifferent but cold attitude, Uncle Chin hesitated for a moment. He recalled how Shirniange had been in a hurry to get out of the car and raise her head to look out the window. Perhaps she really liked this kid, or perhaps she just wanted to take a look at him to be at ease. It did not seem good for him to stop her. After hesitating for a moment, Uncle Chin said, "Just you wait." With that, Uncle Chin turned to open the car door at the back. He looked at Shirniange, who was leaning against the car door. Her face was getting redder and redder because of the fever. She did not move. Nyen nyen. There was no response. Miss? There was still no response. Uncle Chin was worried that something had happened to her because her fever was too serious. He quickly let go of the car door and leaned close to touch her forehead. With this touch, he frowned even more. He turned around and saw that Chin Siding had already walked over. The fever is too serious. I called twice, but there's no reaction. We have to go to the hospital. Chin Siding was outside the car door. He leaned down slightly and saw Shirniange, who was sitting motionless in the car. Her neck was already red, but there was no reaction. Uncle Chin was about to close the car door and drive to the hospital. However, at this moment, Chin Siding raised his hand and pressed it against the car door, stopping him from closing it. The hospital opposite the school is only a small clinic. There are too many unknown causes for a high fever. Don't go to a small hospital. Go straight to the fever clinic and emergency department of the city hospital. Ah. But the city hospital is too far from here. Nyen Nyen is behind. I'll drive. You take care of her from the back. His tone was still cold and commanding. Uncle Chin didn't know what he was thinking. An adult in his 40s was actually stunned by the aura of a child who wasn't even 20 years old. He subconsciously handed the electronic car key to him. Chin Siding took the car key and threw his black shoulder bag into the car. He then signaled for Uncle Chin to get in the car and sit in the back to support Shirniange. He walked around the car, opened the door on the driver's side, and sat in. Chapter 1469. At this moment, Shirniange was completely unconscious, but she was not completely unconscious. Uncle Chin supported her from behind so that she could sit steadily. However, although Chin Siding was young, his driving skills were not bad. He was fast and stable. When the lights changed at the intersection, he would not brake too quickly. Shirniange basically did not need to be supported, and she would not fall from her seat. However, Uncle Chin was still worried. He helped her buckle her seatbelt. After all, Shirniange was a young girl. It was not convenient for Uncle Chin to hold her with his hands. He could only occasionally hold her shoulders and head. Along the way, Chin Siding did not speak. Uncle Chin glanced at the time and asked, "Don't you need to go to class?" "It's fine." Chin Siding saw that there was a traffic jam ahead due to the morning rush hour. He decisively turned the car into a small road. There were quite a few cars on this road, and the road in the middle was very narrow. Even Uncle Chin, who had been driving for decades, had to drive carefully. However, Chin Siding did not slow down at all and drove very steadily. After successfully driving past, he drove to the main road that was not blocked for the time being and successfully drove toward the road closest to the hospital. Uncle Chin turned to look at Nianj, who was still sleeping with her head lowered. "I just gave her some fever medicine, but the medicine probably hasn't taken effect yet. It's still so hot. I don't know how long she had a fever last night. She only called me in the morning," Uncle Chin said as he sighed. "She rarely returns to the Sher family." At this moment, Chin Siding stopped the car at an intersection where the lights had changed. He glanced back through the rearview mirror and saw Nianj pressing her forehead against the door in pain and frowning. Yes, Nian has been very independent since she was young. Now that her parents are not in the country, she found a place near the school and has been living by herself. Uncle Chin sighed. "Thankfully, she called me in the morning and asked me to pick her up. Otherwise, if she maintained this state and stayed at home with a high fever for an entire day, who knows what would have happened." Chin Siding glanced at Nianj in the rearview mirror again. At this moment, the lights in front turned from red to green, and he drove the car forward again. When they arrived at the hospital, Uncle Chin quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and helped her out of the car. Chin Siding got out of the car and was about to go in to help register when Uncle Chin suddenly recalled something. "Wait a minute. I'll go back to the car to get something. Help Nian in first." As he spoke, he quickly helped Nianj to Chin Siding. When Chin Siding reached out to help her, Uncle Chin quickly went to the car to take out the blanket. He also took out his wallet and ID card. Right now, he was equivalent to half of Nianj's elder. If her illness was too serious, he would have to handle any procedures. He had to bring all of these with him. Nianj's body was trembling from the fever. She could not stand at all. Her legs were weak. After being supported by Chin Siding for less than a minute, her entire body fell down softly. However, the moment she almost fell, a strong arm grabbed her from behind and pressed her into his arms. Chin Siding did not need to touch her forehead. Just by touching her back through her clothes, he knew how serious her fever was. "All right, let's go in." Uncle Chin walked over with something and rushed forward to drape a thin blanket over Nianj. "She's still trembling. Wrap her with a blanket." Chin Siding did not say anything. He only raised his hand to take it and wrapped it around her. When he saw that she could not walk at all and was about to stagger and fall after taking 2 steps, Uncle Chin quickly came over and said, "Let me do it. I'll send her in." "Thank you, young Master Chin. Go back to class." Chin Siding did not reply. He reached down and carried Nianj horizontally. He turned around and quickly walked to the main entrance of the hospital's fever clinic. Uncle Chin watched by the side and opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but he felt that it was not appropriate for his girl to be suddenly carried, but at this time, forget it. By the time Uncle Chin rushed over after registering, Nianj was already sitting on the fever clinic bed. She was half-conscious as she sat there. Her upper body was almost leaning into Chin Siding's arms by the bed. Her hot hands kept gripping the hem of his clothes, and she did not know that there were wrinkles. Her brows were furrowed and she hummed twice. She felt very uncomfortable. "How is it?" Uncle Chin came in and saw her in this state. He guessed that she did not even know who she was leaning on. The doctor has written a test form. Let's go for a blood test first. Tell the doctor what time she took the fever medicine. I'll send her for a blood test first. After Chin Siding finished speaking, he helped Shirniange up again. After all, this was the hospital. It was not good to carry her all the way. Seeing that she had woken up slightly, he whispered into her ear, "Can you walk?" Shirniange vaguely felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. It sounded like Chin Siding, but she was not sure. She even felt that it was impossible, but it was too uncomfortable. She could not care too much. When her feet landed on the ground, although her legs were a little weak and her head was still spinning, she still nodded. Chin Siding helped her out. The place where the blood test was conducted was less than 100 meters away from the clinic. In the second half of the journey, she walked with some difficulty. Her head was almost leaning in his arms. Although it looked like she was being supported, in fact, she did not use any strength. She was being carried away. When the doctor came to draw blood, he saw that it was a little girl in school uniform. The clean young man beside her who had been taking care of her, supporting her, and even carrying her should be a student of the same age. Such a good-looking young couple really made the doctors and aunties who were already past their teenage years feel both tender and envious. Seeing that the girl was still in a daze after her blood was drawn, the good-looking and tall boy almost carried her away. The love of school days was really beautiful. The doctors and aunties covered their faces in envy. While waiting for the test results, Uncle Chin went to buy some breakfast. Shirniange did not eat much in the morning. Right now, she was still lying in the lounge waiting for her fever to subside. In a daze, Uncle Chin used a straw to feed her the soy milk cup. She only took 2 sips before vomiting. Thankfully, she only vomited to the side and did not stain her body. Uncle Chin sighed, his heart aching and anxious. Chin Siding did not return to school. Instead, he told the teacher that he was accompanying Shirniange in the hospital and did not hide anything. The form teacher was a little absent-minded after hanging up the phone. Shirniange had a high fever. Chin Siding sent her to the hospital. Chapter 1470. When the blood test results came out, Shirniange's fever finally subsided a little, but it had not completely subsided. When she first came to the hospital in the morning, her temperature was 39.4 degrees Celsius. It was already 10 a.m., and her temperature was 38.6 degrees Celsius. She was still running a high fever, but at least she wouldn't vomit after drinking some water. She lay in the hospital's lounge. As her temperature had dropped, she felt more comfortable and could finally sleep comfortably. Chin Siding took the test results to the outpatient clinic and returned not long after. Seeing that she was still sleeping, he placed the results by the side. "How is it? What did the doctor say? Is it the flu or something?" "It's a cold, but it's already in the realm of influenza B. She'll have a high fever for a few days." After speaking, Chin Siding looked at the time. "Has she eaten?" "Not yet. She can eat the breakfast I bought for her in the morning. I fed her some soy milk and she vomited. However, she drank a few mouthfuls of water before falling asleep. It's okay. She didn't vomit. Think of a way to make her eat. Even if she vomits, she has to eat. She just took her medicine in the morning. She has to continue taking her medicine later. She can't go on an empty stomach," Chin Siding said as he walked to the bed. The doctor said that there's no need to stay in the hospital for observation. Recently, there have been a lot of influenza viruses in the hospital. It's easier for her to be infected with influenza B here. Let her go back to rest, drink more water, and cool down physically. After the fever completely subsides, she'll be fine. Qin Siding spoke and walked to the bed to look at Shirniange, who was still sleeping. All right, I'll send her back later, Uncle Qin said as he looked at the time thoughtfully. Qin Siding glanced at him. Did you take care of her after you went back? I should stay and take care of her, but I have something to do in the afternoon. The auntie who usually follows her closest has returned to her hometown. She'll only return to High City next week. As for the Sher family, I told them not to come after I sent her to the hospital. From the looks of it, I still have to call someone over. I'll call them over now. Qin Siding glanced at Shirniange, who was still sleeping. However, Shirniange's home is indeed too far away. They'll probably arrive later. I'll stay, Qin Siding said. Uncle Qin looked at him in surprise. You? Qin Siding looked up at him. Is there a problem? Of course there was a problem. Although you're the young master of the Qin family, you're still a man and a woman. Our Nian Nian is so beautiful, and the relationship between the two of you is so unclear. How could I leave you alone to take care of her? Uncle Qin didn't dare to say this. He only said, send her back first. Okay, I'll drive. Qin Siding stood up and left. When Shirniange was helped up again, she finally came back to her senses. Qin Siding was no longer in the lounge. She turned to look at Uncle Qin and was stunned for a moment before saying, Uncle Qin, why am I not in school? You still want to go to school with such a high fever? Do you want to be carried to the hospital by your classmates and teachers? Uncle Qin glared at her. All right, the doctor has already taken a look. It's just a viral cold, but if you don't pay attention, it might turn into influenza B. That will be even more uncomfortable and won't recover so quickly. I'll send you back to rest first. After you go back, eat something, take some medicine, and then lie down and sleep well. Don't go to school for the next 2 days. How could she not go to school? Shirniange did not answer and was helped out of the lounge. When she was helped to the car, she opened the car door and sat in. She looked up and saw Qin Siding in the driver's seat. She was stunned for a moment, and her eyes were in a daze for a moment. Qin Siding. Previously, when she was in a daze, she seemed to feel that he was by her side. At that time, she thought she was dreaming or confused from the fever, but he was really here. Why was he here? Did he and Uncle Qin send her to the hospital together? All right, don't be in a daze. Your good classmate came to the hospital without even attending class. Let's send you back first. Uncle Qin patted her shoulder from behind. Shirniange finally returned to her senses. Only then did Shirniange return to her senses. She quickly sat in the car and sat by the driver's seat. She then poked her head out to look at the person sitting in front of her. It's really you. Qin Siding glanced at her through the rearview mirror and did not answer. Seatbelt. In fact, it didn't matter much even if she didn't wear a seatbelt when sitting in the back. However, her stamina wasn't good right now. If she suddenly braked, she might hit the front. Shirniange immediately buckled her seatbelt obediently. She didn't dare to ask any more questions. As though she was afraid that this beautiful dream would be shattered, she didn't even speak. She just sat there, looking at Qin Siding in front of her and then turning to look out of the car window. Even though her head still hurt, her heart felt sweet. She didn't know if it was because of the fever or her mood, but she felt that her feet were floating. Uncle Qin told him the location of Lishui Villa, and Qin Siding drove the car over. It turned out that Qin Siding knew how to drive. Usually, he didn't take the family car or drive. He walked to school. It seemed like he lived very close to the school. She just didn't know which one was closer compared to Lishui Villa. In fact, it took more than 10 minutes to drive from Lishui Villa to the school. He walked to school, so he was probably closer than her. Along the way, because of her body, Shirnianj didn't have the strength to speak even though she was very excited. She just sat in the back and looked at Chin sighting from time to time. With Uncle Chin in the car, she was indeed too embarrassed to chat with Chin sighting. However, she felt satisfied just looking at his back view from behind. He would actually accompany her to the hospital. Earlier, she was a little upset that she had delayed his lessons because she was sick, but this frustration was dispelled by her joy and excitement. Shirnianj sat in the back, the smile on her lips never disappearing. Uncle Chin sat by the side and saw everything clearly. He did not say much. After the car arrived at Lishui Villa, he helped her out of the car. So now, Chin sighting should know where she usually lived and had been to her house. Shirnianj saw Chin sighting help take out her bag from the car and turned back to look at him. Chin sighting returned the electronic car key to Uncle Chin and did not leave immediately. Instead, he walked in with them. Chin sighting actually entered her house. Shirnianj's heart was about to jump out. Her head hurt, but in an instant, she carefully recalled if she had thrown any fruit peels on the ground when she ate the fruits at home last night. Did she confiscate any clothes on the sofa? Was there anything else that she had not packed? If the house was too messy, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Uncle Chin, I'm still alive, right? Shirnianj looked at Chin sighting's figure walking in front of her. As Uncle Chin was supporting her, she leaned close to him and asked softly. Uncle Chin glanced at her strangely. What inauspicious words are you talking about? Isn't it just a fever? That's right. I feel like I might have lost my mind from the fever. This was too unreal. Chapter 1471. After entering the house, Shirnianj quickly walked away from Uncle Chin and went behind Chin sighting. Sit down first. I'll go get some, go back to your room to rest. Before she could finish speaking, Chin sighting stopped in his tracks and turned back to look at her. Shirnianj instinctively felt that since this was Chin sighting's first time at her house, she should pour some water or take out some food or drink for him to sit down and rest. However, it was clear that in his eyes, she was only a patient and could not do anything. Nyen Nyen, go back to your room and lie down first. Uncle Chin gave her a look. In fact, there was another meaning in his gaze. Along the way, Uncle Chin realized that Shirnianj seemed to be very warm to Chin sighting. There was always a feeling that his girl liked someone else more, but the other party was cold and did not respond much. He still wanted her to take advantage of her illness to rest and calm down. Shirnianj's head was indeed hurting, but she could not show off now. Seeing that Chin sighting did not treat her as an outsider and did not need her to do anything, she still found some consciousness of being sick and went upstairs to her room. However, after returning to her room, she tossed and turned but could not fall asleep. Even though her head hurt, she still could not fall asleep. After about 10 minutes, Uncle Chin knocked on the door and came in. Seeing that she was still awake, he came over and brought over a cup of hot water and antipyretic medicine. It's been a few hours since you took the medicine. You can take it again. Then, drink this cup of water. Shirnianj got up and took the medicine. She then turned to look out the door. After swallowing the medicine, she asked, Where's Chin sighting? He's downstairs. Don't worry, he hasn't left. Just sleep in peace. Uncle Chin took the cup from her and looked at the time. He then said, But I have to leave in half an hour. The child has something to do at school this afternoon. The child's mother doesn't have time to go. I have to go over. Can you stay at home? I'll just sleep. What's wrong with that? Go do whatever you need to do. Shirnianj gently waved her hand. However, she suddenly remembered that Qin Siding was still here. Before she could ask, Uncle Qin said, "I've called the Shi family. Your Auntie Lu and Auntie Sue will come to take care of you later. However, it'll take at least an hour for them to rush over. I'll let Qin Company stay here with you for a while. When they arrive, I'll let him go back." In other words, there would be time alone with Qin Siding later. "All right." Shi Nianj smiled. Seeing her smile, Uncle Qin knew what she was thinking. He smiled helplessly and got up to leave. At the thought that she would have time alone with Qin Siding later, Shi Nianj could not fall asleep. She tossed and turned on the bed for a long time and picked up the thermometer to measure the temperature. It was 38 degrees, and she did not feel as uncomfortable as in the morning. When she suddenly heard the sound of a car, she quickly got up from the bed and went to the window to see Uncle Qin's car drive away. Auntie Lu and Auntie Sue, who were rushing over from the Shi family, called at this moment. They said that there was a traffic jam on the way and it would take at least half an hour for them to arrive. "All right, I'm fine. I don't have a high fever like I did in the morning. I feel much better." Situ. Situ, say. Speak. Tang, I, he Qin he Siding, Qin, I, Siding. When he heard her talking on the phone, he turned around and glanced at her, who was standing on the stairs. "Uncle Qin asked you to stay here with me." She hung up the phone and walked down. "And," Qin Siding answered. When he saw that she had come down, he asked, "Why aren't you sleeping in your room?" "I slept well last night, and I slept for so long in the hospital in the morning. Even if I have a headache, I can't sleep." As she spoke, she looked out the window. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing." Qin Siding saw that her expression was still ugly. He walked over and stood in front of her for a while, lowering his eyes to look at her. The person she liked the most was standing in front of her, with one hand in his trouser pocket, looking down at her. They were standing very close to each other, so close that if she raised her head slightly, their breaths would be intertwined. She could clearly smell the scent on his body. It was a clean and refreshing mint scent, with a hint of detergent softener. It was clear and refreshing, with a hint of fragrance. "What's the temperature now?" he asked. "I took a look just now." 38 degrees, she answered obediently. "And, you don't want to sleep?" "I can't sleep. With you here, I can't sleep. It's rare for us to be alone. When the two Shi family's aunties come over, we won't have such a chance. She definitely wouldn't use such a rare time to sleep." "All right, sit down first." As Qin Siding spoke, he raised his hand and was about to touch her forehead. However, before he could touch her, he suddenly saw her look up with stars in her eyes. He paused and retracted his hand. Shi Nianj turned around and sat on the sofa. Then, like an obedient primary school student, she turned to look at him, waiting for his next order. Seeing her expression, Qin Siding did not say anything. He only looked at her haggard appearance. "Did you vomit everything you ate this morning?" "Can you still eat now?" "I don't know. I don't feel hungry right now. I don't have an appetite. I'll go get some food. Why don't you try some?" Shi Nianj's expression changed from obedient to surprised. "Do you want to cook?" Actually, what she wanted to ask was, "Do you actually know how to cook?" However, she felt that it wasn't good to say these words. Qin Siding didn't seem like someone who would casually boast. If he said he knew how to cook, he probably knew how to cook. In fact, the two aunties from the Shi family came to take care of her and specially came to cook for her. However, compared to these, she naturally wanted to eat Qin Siding's cooking. Qin Siding did not answer. He only raised his brows, asking her if she wanted to eat or not. Eat, eat, eat. I'll eat whatever you cook. He glanced at her again and snorted. He did not answer her obviously infatuated words and turned to look for the ingredients in her kitchen. Cherniange rushed to follow closely. Standing outside the kitchen door, she saw that he had already gone in to open the refrigerator. She stuck her head out and said, "There are fruits and various vegetables in the refrigerator." They were all prepared by Auntie Xiang when she came over. As this villa is a little far from the supermarket, there seems to be a lot of frozen things. Otherwise, there's no need to go through too much trouble. Chapter 1472. Not to mention glutinous rice balls or frozen dumplings, even if it was a cup of water that Almighty Qin had personally boiled for her, she could drink it like it was immortal water. After looking at the ingredients in the fridge, Qin Siding said, "It's best to eat something that's easy to digest during a fever. Glutinous rice balls are not easy to digest." "Oh, then anything is fine. Porridge is fine, noodles are fine too." "How about noodles?" "There might be some noodles in the cupboard." Cherniange pointed in the direction of the cupboard. In fact, she would also cook some food. After all, she was used to being independent since she was young. However, she did not cook much. However, she would notice what ingredients were at home when she went into the kitchen to pour water. With her current condition, although she should drink some nutritious food to nourish her body, she would probably vomit out some oily meat soup. The doctor had told her that it was best not to eat eggs, beef, or seafood for a few hours after taking the fever medicine. After Qin Siding found the noodles, he put them in the water to cook. He did not say, and she did not ask. She just felt that no matter what he made, she would definitely be able to eat it. Cherniange could not stand any longer. She had a fever and had yet to eat anything. Her legs were still weak. She turned around and walked back to the sofa to wait. She leaned against the sofa and sat for a while. Not long after, she smelled a fragrance. When Qin Siding brought out 2 bowls of noodles, she poked her head into the bowl and saw that it was 2 bowls of golden and alluring onion oil noodles. "Come and eat." Qin Siding placed the noodles on the dining table by the kitchen. "I'll get the chopsticks." Cherniange stood up and rushed to prepare the cutlery. "There's no need. I saw the chopsticks on it. I'll take them." "Sit down." Qin Siding did not look at her and had already entered the kitchen. Cherniange was so happy that she could not hide the smile on her lips. She quickly sat down at the dining table. Qin Siding came over and handed her the chopsticks. She took it and was too embarrassed to keep staring at him. She directly focused her attention on the onion oil noodles in front of her. After taking a bite, the smile on her lips widened. "You still have to get used to it." Qin Siding saw her expression and asked calmly. "It's delicious." "Of course I'm used to it." It was so delicious that she was almost moved. He knew that she had a cold and fever and could not eat many things. Otherwise, it would affect the efficacy of the fever medicine, so he only made the simplest scallion oil noodles without any messy things. He also knew that she did not have much taste in her mouth right now. If she ate too light soup, she would definitely not be able to eat it, and it would be easy for her to vomit, so he simply made this more appetizing scallion oil noodles. However, he did not put much oil in it. It looked faintly golden, and when it entered the mouth, it was also very fragrant. It was not too oily or salty at all. In short, it was extremely delicious. She would never throw up again with this bowl of noodles. Seeing that she liked it, Qin Siding picked up his chopsticks. Without asking, she guessed that he probably did not eat much in the morning, so he had only made 2 bowls. When she was halfway through eating, Cherniange felt that she was, after all, the owner of this house. Chin Siding was a guest, but she still needed him to cook for her. She put down her chopsticks awkwardly and said, "If I had known that it would be so serious this morning, I would have rested at home. If I hadn't gone to school, you probably wouldn't have seen it and wouldn't have delayed my classes. Send me to the hospital. There are still 3 months before the college entrance examination. I'm really, really sorry for delaying your classes. And, it's fine." Shirnian's heart was filled with joy. She really did not know what to say. She hoped that there would be fewer main courses in school today and not delay him. However, it seemed like he would occasionally read books in advance. Perhaps he had already read the things he had to learn today and had already learned them. That time, when he went out for the competition, there were quite a lot of courses in those days, but later on, he knew all the questions related to the exam. Therefore, it should not be a problem if it was just one day. With this thought in mind, she felt slightly more at ease. She then looked at the person opposite her. Not only did Chin Siding send her to the hospital and accompany her in the hospital, but he also came to her house. Now, he was actually sitting here with her at her house and eating with her. Furthermore, he had personally made the scallion noodles. It was really hard to imagine what Chin Siding's usual life was like. As a member of the Chin family, he actually knew how to make such delicious noodles. Could it be that he was used to taking care of himself and rarely asked the servants and aunties to help him? This was really a bonus. What should she do? She really liked him. She liked him so much that she felt that in the future, she wanted to make a mark on the bowl he was using now. In the future, when she ate, she would definitely use that bowl. No matter how many times it had been washed in the dishwasher, those were all bowls that Chin Siding had touched. She felt that she could place them by the bed and stare at them every day. As she watched Chin Siding eat quietly, Shirnian's heart continued to race. The way he ate was really good-looking. After the meal, Shirnian could not help but ask Chin Siding, "When I was in the car in the morning, I saw you under that tree. Did you happen to pass by at that time, or were you waiting for me?" Chin Siding looked at her. When Shirnian thought that he would not answer her question, he slowly said, "Waiting for you." Shirnian's mouth was slightly agape. She looked at Chin Siding and felt that her breathing was not smooth. Her brain seemed to be filled with something and blocked. She could not come back to her senses. He was waiting for her. Was he waiting for her under the tree where she had been waiting for him recently? Shirnian's heart churned. Why would you wait for me?" Chin Siding did not answer her because the 2 aunties of the Shir family had arrived and pressed the doorbell. Shirnian stood up to open the door, but she turned back to look at Chin Siding, wanting to hear what he would say. However, it was as though he had not said anything. He lowered his head to look at the time on his phone. The door opened, and Auntie Lou and Auntie Sue walked in with various bottles and cans in their hands. At the same time, they sized her up nervously. "Nyen Nyen, little ancestor, why didn't you tell us earlier that you were sick? We could have come earlier. When we were at home, we were in a hurry and didn't have time to cook anything. Now, we're here to cook something for you. Just wait." "No need, Auntie Lou. I've eaten." Shirnian chuckled. "You've eaten? Did you make it yourself?" The 2 aunties were surprised. "No, it's my classmate. He accompanied me to the hospital and school today and then came back with Uncle Chin to take care of me for a while. He made some simple food. I'm already very full." At the mention of Chin Siding, Shirnian felt her ears heat up. As she spoke, she even glanced at the clean young man behind her. Chapter 1473. The 2 aunties had seen the fairy-like young man when they entered the door, but since Shirnian was sick, they did not ask too much. Now, they shifted their attention back to Chin Siding. At first, they were surprised, but then they quickly said, "It's good that you've eaten. We were afraid that it would be too late to cook here. Why aren't you going back to your room to rest? What are you still doing here? Didn't you have a fever?" "I'm much better now. I can't sleep even if I keep lying down. Besides, I just ate. If I lie down directly, my stomach won't feel well." "That's right. Then all of you rest. Your Auntie Sue and I will go get some fruits for you and your classmates to eat. If you're sick, drink more water and eat more fruits and vegetables. The two of us will stay here tonight until you recover." "I don't think it's possible. Don't stay in Lishui Villa alone. Come back to the Sure family with us." Auntie Lou was usually talkative, but now, she was nagging non-stop. "No, the Sure family is too far from the school. This place is close to the school, and it's convenient to go to school. There's no need to wake up so early. You know that I'm in my 3rd year of high school. I leave early and return late every day. There's no need to waste so much time on the road." As Sure Nianj spoke, she glanced back at Chin Siding, meaning that he could help her testify how tight the school time was. Chin Siding's beautiful brows moved slightly, but he did not say much. When the two aunties looked at him, he nodded politely as a form of courtesy. After the two aunties arrived, Chin Siding had no reason to continue staying here. Even if Sure Nianj didn't want him to leave, it was already past 12 o'clock. He could return to school before 1 in the afternoon. This way, he would only be delaying half of his lessons. No matter how reluctant she was, she still said, "Go back to school before 1. It's just delaying the morning's lessons. My guilt in my heart will be smaller. Can you help me back up my notes?" "Sure. Thank you, Almighty Chin." This was the only conversation between the two of them after the two aunties arrived. Seeing that he had left, Sure Nianj stood by the door and watched his back. In fact, she felt a little regretful. If she hadn't asked him to return to school in the afternoon, if she hadn't asked him to leave, would he not have left so quickly? But she really didn't want him to waste his time here, even if he didn't want to. Auntie Sue went upstairs to disinfect her room. When she came down, she saw that Sure Nianj was still standing in front of the door, thinking about something. She walked over and said, "Nian Nian, the room has been disinfected. Remember to ventilate it these few days, in case you catch a cold. What are you still standing here for? Hasn't your classmate already left?" "Nothing." Sure Nianj retracted her gaze. She did not dare to look at Auntie Sue's curious gaze and returned to her room. The bowl and chopsticks that Chin Siding had used became Sure Nianj's personal use. She used the same set every day when she ate at home. Although it seemed a little shameful, he still wanted to use it. Even when he was eating, he couldn't wait to hold it with both hands, afraid of knocking it or touching it. He was even more careful than the ancient ceramic bowls at home that were worth 6 or 7 figures. After all, Chin Siding had used it before. Sure Nianj personally washed the dishes. After washing them, she wiped them dry and placed them in a conspicuous position in the cupboard drawer. The phone in her pocket rang. She had sent a message to Chin Siding half an hour ago, and he had only replied now, "Back up." After resting at home for 3 days, her fever finally subsided. Her mental state was much better, and she could return to school tomorrow. She had just sent a message to Chin Siding to ask if he had helped her make a backup of her notes in class. Then he replied. Looking at the 3 words sent by Chin Siding on her phone, Sure Nianj felt sweet in her heart. Perhaps it was because she had liked him for a long time that she would find candy to eat. Now, every time she spoke to him or sent him a message, she would feel sweet from the bottom of her heart. Chin Siding seemed to be different from before. Although he was still cold and spoke little, basically, no matter what she asked or sent, he would answer her directly. His expression in front of her was no longer expressionless and cold. In fact, there would be some changes, although the changes were not too big. And that day, he said that he was waiting for her. Nianj clearly remembered that when the two of them first sat at the same table, Qin Siding's expression was always cold because there was another person by his side. She could tell how cold he was, and he really didn't want her to sit by his side. His occasional frown and impatient expression all showed his rejection at that time. And now, when she smiled at him or said a word, he would turn his head to look at her. His gaze would also land on her face. He would no longer avoid her. His gaze would also calmly look at her without much coldness. She could happily wait for him outside the school gates every day and go to school with him. She could sit together every day and look for him to read his notes, look at his papers, and ask him to help her analyze the big questions. Most importantly, he would actually wait for her under the tree. It seemed like he usually didn't talk much to others, especially to girls. There were too many girls who had a crush on him, but he really ignored them. He didn't even look at them. Just like how he rarely spoke to other girls, of course, he definitely wouldn't text other girls. However, Qin Siding would reply to her messages. Now that she had recovered, she could lie down and roll around again. Nianj ran back to the bedroom and rolled around for a long time before she calmed down. When she slept at night, she was still thinking about how she had to wait for him under the tree early tomorrow morning because he knew that she would return to school tomorrow. If she was late, would he wait for her again? Forget it. It was better for her to wait for him. She fell asleep with such a mood. When she woke up the next day, she was in a good mood. When she rushed under the tree to wait, she specially looked at the time. It was a few minutes earlier than she had arrived a few days ago. He would definitely see her when he passed by later. 2 minutes later, Nianj heard the sound of a car nearby. She subconsciously turned back and suddenly saw the familiar black business car. It was the car that Qin Siding's mother used last time. Her gaze shifted in that direction and saw that the car was parked between the tree and the school gate. The smile in her eyes gradually disappeared. Seeing this car, she knew without guessing. Qin Siding probably wouldn't take this path today. Recently, it's really the ice age of the online literature world. I heard that many of my friends' books have been blocked and removed from the shelves. It's getting stricter and stricter. Qing's book has also been blocked for more than 100 chapters because Mo Nwan's plot is too sweet and ambiguous. I'm still working hard to change it. I hugged my head and cried. Chapter 1474. As expected, Qin Siding did not take this path at all today. She did not see a single person. Nianj waited for a while. Seeing that a few minutes had passed, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Qin Siding. Have you arrived at school? Qin Siding recovered rather quickly. No. Nianj, I saw that black business car again. You won't be walking here today, will you? Qin Siding replied, Where are you? Nianj, it's okay. I've already entered the school. You don't have to come over. With that, she raised her eyes to look at the business car again. She ignored it and walked toward the school gate. She heard her phone vibrate again and picked it up to take a look as she walked. Qin Siding, don't move. I'll come over. She paused in her steps and abruptly turned back to look at her surroundings. She guessed that Qin Siding was really on another road. She quickly took a photo of the school gate for him. I'm already in. You don't have to come over. I know you don't want to see the person in that car. I don't want to see you unhappy. See you in class later. After sending it, she quickly walked into the school building. Qin Siding did not reply. She entered the class, put down her bag, and walked out. She stood at the staircase for a while. This was the only way to enter the class. She could clearly wait for him to enter the class, but she wanted to come earlier, even if it was a second or a few seconds earlier. When Qin Siding's figure appeared at the staircase below, Shinianj quickly waved at him happily. Qin Siding, almighty Qin, the clean young man, heard the noise and looked up from the staircase. He saw a girl in a school uniform waving at him with a smile on her face. She was no longer standing under the tree outside the school gate. Instead, she was standing at the staircase outside the classroom. She held the railing beside the staircase with one hand and waved at him with the other. Her smiling eyes were curved and full of joy. Coincidentally, the form teacher, Teacher Zhao, happened to walk up from behind Qin Siding. The two of them walked up the stairs at almost the same time. When they heard Shinianj's words, they immediately stopped and raised their heads to look at her. The excited expression on Shinianj's face instantly froze. Her hand stopped in mid-air and she grinned at Teacher Zhao. Teacher Zhao. Teacher Zhao's expression froze, and he glared at her, meaning for her to hurry back to class. Shinianj pursed her lips and secretly glanced at Qin Siding. Seeing that he was still cold and indifferent, he did not even look at the teacher behind him. He just walked up as though nothing had happened. Under the teacher's glare, Shinianj quickly turned around and ran back to the class. Before she ran back, she even gave Qin Siding a happy look. Qin Siding saw this look. Teacher Zhao stood on the spot, fuming. He stood there with one hand on his waist. He recalled Shinianj's extremely happy expression and then recalled Qin Siding's expression when he stopped to look up. It seemed like he was still a little focused. These two kids can't really be in love, right? They were already adults. It was very common for high school students to fall in love. Furthermore, these two were from the Qin family and the Shi family. He definitely could not control them. However, it was not long before the college entrance examination. If they fell in love now, what if it affected their studies? The key was that Shinianj really did not hide it. Back then, before she came to the third year of high school, she had also heard about her and Tang Xiao. However, when she heard the teachers in the office chatting and discussing, they said that the Tang family and the Shi family were cooperating. The two children became closer. It seemed like they were not very intimate in school. They did not even hold hands when they often ate together, so the teachers turned a blind eye. However, Shinianj clearly did not treat Qin Siding that way. This girl seemed to like Qin Siding very much. After being a teacher for so many years, he had seen many stories of secret love and open love, especially Qin Siding. He was definitely a dragon among men. There were many young ladies who liked him, but Shinianj seemed to really have the ability to make him stop and take a second look. If these two kids really fell in love, shouldn't he, as a teacher, use some authority to warn them? At least wait until after the college entrance examination. However, after all, they were from the Shi family and the Qin family. He still had to protect his job. If he said anything harsh, it would not be good for him. He could not hit, say, or scold them. What should he do? Teacher Zhao was very distressed. He could only hope that these two children simply liked each other and did not do anything before the college entrance examination. While Teacher Zhao was fuming, Shinianj returned to the class and sat down. She raised her eyes and saw Qin Siding enter. She raised her hand and greeted him with a sweet smile. Teacher Zhao, I'm sorry. Qin Siding walked over and sat down by her side. She leaned over and whispered, Almighty Qin, where are my notes? Qin Siding glanced at her and handed the pink notebook that belonged to her desk. Shinianj quickly picked it up and flipped through it. She saw that there were a few pages in her notebook that were filled with Chin Siding's handwriting. She instantly held the notebook and giggled happily. Sure, Nianj was also big-hearted. After attending class for a while, she forgot about seeing the car in the morning. Chin Siding did not mention it either. She did not know if he had taken a detour in the morning or if he had really gone under the tree. Forget it. In any case, he seemed to know everything. There was nothing for her to worry about. For the entire morning, Sure Nianj would occasionally look at the pages of words in her notebook. As she had read too much, she had actually memorized all the lessons she had missed in the past few days. She even took the opportunity to look at Chin Siding's own handwriting after class. After comparing the notes for the past few days, she realized that his own notes were still in his usual style. It was especially difficult to look at them. However, the notes he had backed up for her were all simple and introductory. She could easily understand them and absorb them into her brain. After looking at them a few more times, it was as though she could remember the essence of them. As a result, in the past few days, she had only read the notes a few times. It was as though she had made up for it. She did not miss anything at all. He actually knew how she usually listened in class and took notes. He actually knew that she could remember it in this way. Until the afternoon, Sure Nianj was still admiring her notebook in satisfaction. While Chin Siding was not paying attention, she secretly used a red pen to mark a few red hearts and two-way red heart arrows at the bottom of the pages he had written. Chin Siding saw that she was secretly writing and drawing on the notebook. He glanced at her indifferently. Sure Nianj covered the notebook to prevent him from looking at her. She only smiled sweetly. Chapter 1475. After finishing the painting, Sure Nianj sat there in satisfaction and admired it for a while. Then she sighed. The person she liked was sitting by her side. This feeling was really wonderful. There were still 2 more classes before school ended. There were activities in school tonight, so there was no need to study at night. She could leave early. Sure Nianj felt quite regretful that she couldn't enter the school gates with Chin Siding in the morning. After school, she simply walked with him from the back. Initially, Chin Siding thought that she was only here to buy something from the supermarket on the way here and would leave after buying it. In the end, he realized that she did not enter the supermarket but still took the same route as him. In fact, Sure Nianj had found this road a few days ago when she was resting at home and bored. She realized that she could go home from the main road in front of the school's entrance. Although it was a little longer than taking the road beside her, it was not much different. It would only take her more than 10 minutes to walk. However, this way, she could walk with Chin Siding. There were many students on the main road in the middle. Sure Nianj followed him for a long time but was too embarrassed to go to the front. She just walked slowly behind him. Chin Siding walked too fast. In fact, it was difficult for her to catch up. Gradually, she suddenly realized that his footsteps had slowed down. She first looked at his back, then saw that he had stopped and turned back to look at her. Seeing that he had discovered her so quickly, Sure Nianj was a little surprised. She suddenly turned around without thinking and did not react for a moment. For a long time, she was conflicted about how to be firm with Chin Siding without appearing too deliberate. After thinking for a while, she turned around and saw that Chin Siding was still standing there looking at her. She could only bite the bullet and walk over. "Hi, what a coincidence." Chin Siding asked her, "Where are you going?" "Home." Sure Nianj quickly moved closer to his side. "Home." Chin Siding raised his brows coldly. It was clear that he was not convinced by her reason. "I mean, the road beside the school has to pass through the middle street. There have been a lot of people on the street recently, and there's a road that's being repaired. It's bumpy, and it's very difficult to walk. It's almost dark now. There are few people on that road, and it's not safe. I'm thinking of changing to the main road. Anyway, when we get close to Lishui Villa, there happens to be a specially built road that leads directly to my home. Qin Siding did not interrupt her explanation. He just glanced at her again and nodded. Nodding meant that he agreed with what she said, or that he accepted what she said. In the end, he did not refute her or expose her. From that day onwards, Shirnianj would follow Qin Siding at night and walk with him for 10 to 20 minutes. If she walked fast, it would only be 10 minutes. If she walked slowly, it would be 20 minutes. However, usually, they did not talk much because they could not find much to talk about. Furthermore, it was a topic that only one person could talk about. Qin Siding did not talk much. She knew this very well. Finally, she heard the bell that said that school was over. However, she had to study until 9:00 tonight. By then, the sky would already be dark. Usually, if it was so late, Uncle Qin would come to pick her up, or she would take a taxi back to Lishui Villa. But tonight, she still wanted to leave with Qin Siding. Hearing the bell ring at 9:30 p.m., Shirnianj quickly packed her school bag and sat inside waiting for Qin Siding to get up. Every day, she packed her school bag faster than Qin Siding because she knew that if she was slow, Qin Siding might not wait for her. Although she didn't know if he would wait, she didn't want him to wait. This was too risky. She didn't dare to try. After leaving the school gate, she still had to take a turn. After walking with him for 20 minutes, there were very few people on the road behind. Every day, she would walk with him on the innermost right side because Qin Siding didn't like crowds. Occasionally, when someone brushed past him, he would avoid them. He was indeed the Qin Siding who didn't like to touch others. It's so cold today. As Shirnianj spoke, she withdrew her hands into her sleeves. It's already April, but it's still so cold. This spring is so long. Almighty Qin, you have to wear more clothes. I don't think you usually wear thick clothes. I remember that you didn't wear thick clothes in winter either. Be careful not to catch a cold. Look, the last time I caught a cold, I had a high fever. It was so uncomfortable. Qin Siding said, "It's not cold." Why isn't it cold? Your hands are clearly cold. Shirnianj recalled that when she accidentally touched his hand on the table during class, she felt that his hand was sometimes warm and sometimes cold. On the other hand, every time she blushed and her heart raced, she felt that her blood was flowing to her hand, and she felt that her fingers were burning. Qin Siding did not reply. Shirnianj had finally found a topic to talk about before it ended. She was also afraid that if she spoke too much, Qin Siding would find it noisy, so she quietly followed him for a while. Seeing that they were about to reach the corner of the intersection, Shirnianj said, "A few days ago, Teacher Zhao asked me to go to his office to tutor more. In the future, he might ask me to stay in the office during self-study time. I think my grandfather said something to the teacher to ask me to improve my grades. Actually, I want to enter medical school. According to my current mock exam results, I can actually pass. However, the teacher has been especially strict with me recently, so I can't study with you." What she said was true. Originally, she wanted to rely on medical school. With her current grades and scores, she could actually get in smoothly. However, Grandpa probably didn't want her to neglect cultural studies because she wanted to study medicine. So, he told the teacher about it, which caused the teacher to keep an eye on her recently. Qin Siding answered softly, "All right. Then tomorrow." Shirnianj was actually a little embarrassed, but she felt that although he did not reject her leaving with him, he did not seem to have anything to talk to her about. She had persisted for so many days, but his response could be counted on one hand. Although she could find some sweetness and joy from it, it was inevitable that she would suffer some blows. However, she still braced herself and asked, "Can I wait for you under the tree outside the school tomorrow morning? I can still leave with you tomorrow night, right?" Enchanting answered very quickly. Without thinking, he nodded. All right. These two "all right" were too wonderful. If Enchanting wasn't right in front of her, Dreamy would have jumped up. He did not reject her, and it was clear that he was used to her existence. "See you tomorrow." Dreamy could not suppress her happiness. She smiled and waved at him, turning to leave. She calculated in her heart. Every night, they would walk together for 20 minutes, and in the morning, they would spend a lot of time alone. Chapter 1476. Dreamy turned around and walked toward the path with few people. She had only taken a few steps when her phone suddenly vibrated in her pocket. She stopped and picked it up to take a look. "Enchanting, just to walk with me for 20 minutes, you have to spend 20 minutes walking on an almost empty path every day. It's dark and the road is long. Aren't you afraid?" Dreamy's heart skipped a beat. Was he starting to expose her? Did he think that her actions were unnecessary? She lowered her head and was about to reply when she suddenly felt someone approaching from behind. She subconsciously turned her head and saw that Enchanting had walked over at some point in time. He walked to her side and looked down at her. "There's no need to reply. I'll send you back." Dreamy opened her mouth in surprise. "Ah." By the time she reacted, Enchanting had already walked in front of her. She was stunned for a long while before she quickly jogged to catch up. "Almighty Chin, are you sending me home?" She smiled so widely that she could not close her mouth. Why? It's really too far for you to walk back after sending me back. It's very late. It's not safe for you to be alone. I'm fine. There aren't many people on this road. I think even if there are bad people, they won't walk on such a deserted road, Dreamy said with a chuckle. Dreamy said with a chuckle, but although she said that, her body was very honest. She followed closely behind him. Enchanting suddenly stopped in his tracks. She was caught off guard and almost bumped into his back. She quickly stopped and raised her head to look at him. The clean youth stared into her eyes. "Are you usually so careless? There aren't even any streetlights on this road. How are you going to walk back?" "I have a flashlight in my bag, my phone can also light up." He pursed his lips and did not speak. He looked at the pitch-black road around him and walked forward without saying anything. Why did she feel like he was angry? Don't be angry. She was happy. Dreamy quickly followed him. She suddenly took the opportunity to tug on his sleeve. Seeing that he did not pull his hand back, she tugged at his sleeve and said, "It's indeed very dark. I can't even see the road clearly. Can I just hold on to you like this?" There was no response, nor did he wave it away. Very good. He didn't walk very fast, so she could keep up. However, he was still tall, so if he walked slowly, she would have to walk faster. If she walked too fast, she wouldn't be able to control the strength in her hands. Her fingers suddenly fell out of his sleeves. However, in that instant, he suddenly stopped and looked back at her. It wasn't until she hurriedly pulled on his sleeves that he retracted his gaze and continued walking. The next day, Dreamy woke up early. Or, it could be said that after she was sent back by Enchanting last night, she almost did not sleep. Her heart was filled with this person, and she kept thinking about this person. Before 5 in the morning, she did not want to sleep. She got up and heated milk and bread for herself. After quickly eating, she took her school bag and went downstairs. She had left too early today and would probably have to wait for him outside the school for half an hour. It was still quite cold outside. Nianj shrunk her shoulders and leaned against the tree, thinking that it would be summer in a month. It would probably only be cold for a few days. Soon, even her school uniform would have to be changed into summer clothes. She then thought about how she seemed to have come out a little early and felt that she had been silly recently. However, she couldn't care less. She just felt that even if she stood here for half an hour in advance, she would be very happy during this half an hour of waiting. Time finally passed bit by bit. Half an hour later, she saw Enchanting's figure appear at the intersection in front of her. Nianj immediately smiled. It was a feeling that all the flowers in her heart had bloomed. Nianj had never experienced this kind of longing for a person's experience before, but this feeling was really good and comfortable. She felt that her entire heart was soft. Almighty Qin, when she approached, she waved her hand and greeted with a smile. Good morning. Enchanting looked at her, his gaze calm and warm. Nianj saw the corners of his lips curl up slightly. He said, Good morning. Did he just smile? Did he smile at her? Nianj stood rooted to the spot, somewhat stunned. She stared at his face and did not move. Her mouth was still slightly open. She looked a little silly. The smile on Enchanting's lips widened. He looked into her eyes and repeated, Good morning. This time, the smile in his eyes was even more obvious. Nianj blinked and then nodded vigorously. Good morning. Good morning, Almighty Qin. She spoke too quickly. She looked like a little rabbit that was about to jump out of its cage. Oh my God, Enchanting smiled at her. His smile was too good-looking. Oh my God. She felt that her blood was about to be dried by his smile in an instant. Earlier, when she saw him walk under the tree, she felt that the flowers in her heart had bloomed early. Now, the flowers in her heart had almost exploded into fireworks, crackling. She hadn't waited for half an hour in the morning for nothing. If she had known that waiting for him for half an hour would allow Enchanting to smile at her, she wouldn't have waited for half an hour. After all, she couldn't sleep last night. She should have come to wait in the morning. His smile made Nianj dumbfounded. Even when she entered the school and the teaching building, she could not say a word. Nian. Nianj heard someone calling her from behind. Before she could turn back, she felt her arms suddenly being pulled back by a force. She turned around and saw that Tang Xiao had actually run over early in the morning. Seeing that she was walking beside Enchanting, he quickly went forward and pulled her over. She was caught off guard and almost bumped into Tang Xiao's arms. It wasn't easy for her to stabilize herself and quickly dodged to the side. She frowned and suddenly turned back to look at Enchanting. She saw that Enchanting was calmly looking at Tang Xiao's hand on her wrist. With just a glance, Nianj quickly pulled her hand out. Tang Xiao, what are you doing? Nianj felt an inexplicable anger in her heart. She turned her eyes. The last time your dad came to stop me at the school gate, I should have told him very clearly. What do you want? I don't mean anything else. I know you're determined not to be with me, but Nian, my grandfather's birthday is next week. He invited all the big families in High City to hold a birthday party at Diao Hotel. The Shi family is also invited. Will you go? Tang Xiao saw her unhappy expression and did not dare to say more. He could only go straight to the point. However, his expression was filled with concern that she had actually walked in with Enchanting. Chapter 1477. Tang Xiao's grandfather's birthday. Shi Nian's heart skipped a beat. Although the Tang family had some reputation in High City, the Shi family's business had been booming in recent years. They were like a dark horse in High City and were widely praised by the industry. There were countless partners who came with money. The reason why they agreed to cooperate with the Tang family was because Tang Xiao's grandfather had done the Shi family a favor. On account of this, the Shi and Tang families were closer. Since Tang Xiao had mentioned his grandfather, no matter how unwilling Shi Nian was, she could not fall out with him on the spot, even though she wished she could kick the central air conditioner to the horizon. Even if the Shi family was invited, my parents aren't in the country. As a child, I can't represent my parents to attend your grandfather's birthday banquet, Shi Nian said coldly. Shi Nian said coldly, when I go back tonight, I'll call my parents to inform them. They should send some birthday gifts back. You can just inform my parents about this. There's no need to tell me. After speaking, she turned to see that Qin Siding was still standing there. He did not leave, nor did he have any intention of rushing her. However, he was clearly waiting for her. Tang Xiao also noticed this and turned to look at Qin Siding. He immediately felt even more upset. This iceberg rarely interacted with others, but he had only come to class 6 a few times. These few times, he could almost see Shi Nian walking with Qin Siding. Tang Xiao immediately felt that this sense of crisis was somewhat obvious. He suddenly held her wrist again. Come out with me. It's almost time for morning self-study. Our form teacher is almost here. Where am I going? Shi Nian quickly shook him off. All right, Tang Xiao. If there's anything, text me. Don't make me late for morning self-study, okay? Seeing that Qin Siding was still standing there silently waiting for her, and that Shi Nian was in a hurry to go to his side, Tang Xiao frowned and lowered his voice to ask in a low voice that only she could hear, what's going on between you and Qin Siding? Why are you so close? He's my desk mate. It's normal for us to be close. Besides, I don't think there's any need for me to explain to you. Shi Nian really couldn't stand his pestering. Tang Xiao, do you have to make me say the ugliest things? Don't you know how we started walking together? Don't you know how it ended? There was no emotional foundation in the first place. If it's over, then it's over. It's really meaningless for you to keep pestering me like this. I'm not pestering you. I really like you, Nian Nian. Tang Xiao wanted to hold her hand. This time, Shi Nian decided to suddenly escape from his side. She took 2 steps to the side and moved closer to Qin Siding. Although she did not grab his arm or tug at his sleeve, she instinctively hid behind him. Big brother, just because you like me doesn't mean that I have to like you. Just like how you like to carry the prettiest girl in your class to the infirmary and take care of her for an entire afternoon, it doesn't mean that I have to be a saint and applaud your kindness. People were different, especially when they had different viewpoints. It was even more impossible for them to be together. That would only torture each other. Shi Nian was too lazy to speak, but her expression was filled with the distance between her and Tang Xiao. Qin Siding stood in place without moving. Tang Xiao had just taken 2 steps in this direction when he suddenly saw Qin Siding reach out and hold Shi Nian's hand. At the same time, he turned back and said as though there was no one else here, "Can we go in now?" Shi Nian was also stunned by the sudden warmth of his palm. She looked at him in a daze. And, Qin Siding retracted his hand, but at this moment, he placed his hand on her back. It could not be considered a hug, but it looked especially intimate. Just like that, he placed one hand on her back in a protective manner and protected her as she entered the classroom. When the 2 of them entered, they did not look back, but Tang Xiao's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Damn it, was he cuckolded by Qin Siding? What was Shi Nian's expression just now? Was she actually shocked and shy? She had never had such an expression when she was with him. She was clearly a calm and rational young lady in front of him. Her personality could not hide her liveliness and cuteness, but at least she had never been as shy as before. She actually liked Qin sighting. Tang Xiao was furious, but he noticed that the teacher of class 6 was walking over from the office. Seeing a teacher coming over, he turned around with a dark expression and picked up his phone to call Shinianj as he walked toward his class. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later." He called again, but it was still the same. Tang Xiao put down his phone with a dark expression. He had indeed been blacklisted by her long ago. Even now, she had not released him. Qin sighting placed his hand on her back and walked into the class with her. There were already many students in the class. After entering, he put his hand down without a trace and signaled her with his gaze to sit down and not waste time in front of the door. Shinian's mind was still in a daze. She sat down and turned to look at him. Qin sighting glanced at her again, as though asking, "Do you have something to say?" She immediately stopped talking and didn't ask anything, but her heart was pounding. She didn't want to be too arrogant, but why did she feel that Qin sighting seemed to? However, she didn't have the chance to think too much. The form teacher had already entered. After entering, he called out a few students who had fought in the school field last night. There was actually Hao Xiuxia. After being scolded by the teacher, several students were called to the office by the teacher with a cold face, and the class monitor was ordered to watch over everyone's morning self-study. Although the teacher was not present at the moment, the atmosphere in the entire class was so strict that no one dared to breathe. Thankfully, Qin sighting was not affected at all. Shinianj sat inside him. On her left was him, and on her right was the wall. She always had a sense of security that was not disturbed by the outside world. Last night, because he had sent her home, she was too happy and did not sleep well. Now that he was by her side, she inexplicably relaxed and felt very sleepy. During the morning self-study session, everyone was very quiet. She lowered her head and wrote for a while before she could not take it anymore. She wanted to lean on the table and nap for a few minutes, but unknowingly, she fell asleep. She slept until the morning self-study session ended. When the bell rang, she woke up with a start. She opened her eyes and raised her head to see that everyone had left. It should be time for class to end. She wanted to sleep for another 10 minutes and wake up after class. She then leaned on the table again. She was really sleepy. She closed her eyes and fell asleep again. Chapter 1478. Qin sighting saw that she had fallen asleep again and glanced sideways at her. He saw that she had buried her face in her arms and was sleeping soundly. She looked like she wanted to sleep here for the entire day. The bell rang. It was the first class of the morning, and all the students rushed in from outside. Hao Xiuxia, who had been called to the office by the teacher for a lecture, also rushed in. When he sat down, he saw that Shinianj was still sleeping on her stomach. He quickly reached out to pat her awake. However, just as he stretched out his hand, it was suddenly blocked by a hand that rose from the air. Hao Xiuxia was surprised. He looked at the person beside Shinianj and suddenly received Qin sighting's gaze. There's no need to call her. Ah. Almighty Qin actually took the initiative to speak to him. Hao Xiuxia was stunned for a few seconds before quickly retracting his hand. However, he still glanced in disbelief at Shinianj, who was still sleeping on her stomach. Zhao Xiaoqing was also very surprised. It was already class, but Almighty Qin did not allow her to wake Shinianj up. He even blocked her. It seemed like he could not bear to wake her up. Could it be that Nian Nian had finally seen the bright moon? After guarding this iceberg for more than half a year, had she finally melted it. Nianj slept very soundly. She did not even hear the bell ringing. She had been sleeping on her stomach, and no one woke her up. In her sleep, she felt that these 10 minutes seemed a little long, but she was confident that someone would wake her up during class, so she allowed herself to continue sleeping. In her daze, she seemed to hear the teacher speaking, but she could not hear clearly. In the end, she was pulled back by her sleepiness. The first class was chemistry. The chemistry teacher saw Nianj sleeping and frowned. He picked up half a piece of chalk and was about to throw it at her to wake her up. In the end, Enchanting sat by her side and glanced at the podium from afar, causing the chemistry teacher's brows to twitch. Why did the Qin family's crown prince look like he was warning her? Was he planning to let Nianj continue sleeping? The chemistry teacher coughed and did not speak further. He began the lesson, but no teacher wished for a student to sleep in his class. At the beginning, his voice was louder than usual, but Nianj was still unconscious. He then saw Enchanting place the books on Nianj's table neatly in front of her, blocking the light in front of her table. It was as though he could isolate some sound for no reason. Seeing this, the chemistry teacher gave up and returned to his normal tone to continue the lesson. The third class was the form teacher's class. After the second class, Enchanting received a call and went out. Seeing that class was about to start, they were instinctively afraid of the form teacher, old Zhao. They quickly took advantage of Enchanting's absence to wake Nianj up. Nianj rarely slept in class. Although her grades were not top-notch, she was definitely one of the students who was serious enough to make the teacher like her. Today, it was rare for her to sleep from morning self-study to the last 2 classes. She had almost made up for her sleep. Suddenly, she was woken up by Hao Xiuxia. She sat up and looked forward in a daze. She realized that it was still time for class to end. Could it be that class was about to start? She woke up. Hey, Nian, you've already slept for a morning self-study session and 2 classes. The next class is old Zhao's. Don't sleep anymore, Hao Xiuxia said from behind. When Nianj heard this, a chill ran down her spine. She abruptly turned to look at the little fatty behind her. I slept for 2 classes. Hao Xiuxia nodded and then said with an admiring expression, you're really good. Earlier, the chemistry teacher and the language teacher didn't wake you up, but I guess it's because Almighty Qin was sitting next to you. Otherwise, the teacher's chalk would definitely hit your head. Nianj was stunned for a moment before turning to look at Zhao Xiaoqing. She saw that Zhao Xiaoqing nodded hard at her, which was equivalent to confirming Hao Xiuxia's words. She quickly picked up her phone to check the time. It was really about to start the 3rd class. Oh my god, she actually slept for so long. Didn't anyone wake her up for so long? Why didn't you wake me up during class? She turned back and asked. Zhao Xiaoqing glanced at Hao Xiuxia, and Hao Xiuxia also glanced at Zhao Xiaoqing. The 2 of them spread their hands. What's wrong? Seeing their expressions, Nianj felt that they had something to say. Your Almighty Qin didn't allow us to wake you up, Zhao Xiaoqing said meaningfully. Zhao Xiaoqing said meaningfully, so Shai's demon claws have already reached your back, but Almighty Qin stopped them. He said not to wake you up and told you to sleep well. Ah. Nianj felt that she was probably still asleep. Otherwise, why would she hear such words? Did Enchanting not allow others to wake her up? Then what did she look like when she slept? Did you leave a mark on your face? Did she sleep until her face turned red? Did he see how she slept in class? Now that she had slept enough and her mental state was better, she sat there in a daze as though she had not woken up. The bell for the 3rd class rang. When Enchanting returned, he saw that she was already awake. His gaze first landed on her, and then on Hao Xiuxia behind her. Hao Xiuxia quickly raised his book to cover his face to prevent Almighty Qin from settling the score with him. He was indeed the one who woke Shi Nianj up. Zhao Xiaoqing did not dare to speak from the back. She quietly glanced in Shi Nianj's direction and saw that she was still sitting there in a daze. I slept for so long. Shi Nianj turned to look at Qin Siding, who had quietly sat down. One morning self-study session and 2 classes. Qin Siding looked at her. Why didn't you wake me up? Being looked at by him like this, Shi Nianj felt a little embarrassed. I didn't sleep well last night and woke up early this morning, so I was especially sleepy. In the morning, I couldn't control myself and fell asleep. Originally, I only wanted to sleep for morning self-study, but I didn't expect that I wouldn't wake up during class. Qin Siding did not answer. He only placed a bottle of hot milk that she usually bought at the school supermarket on her table and said, "Finish it." Shi Nianj was even more shocked. She woke up too early in the morning. Usually, between the first and second classes, she would buy milk for the supermarket auntie to heat up and bring it back to drink. He actually remembered her habit. He knew that she did not drink milk in the morning and actually went to buy it for her after class. She suddenly did not know what to say. Suddenly, she felt like crying. Shi Nianj, was a tough woman who would not shed a single tear for years. At this moment, she actually felt like crying. What was wrong with her today? Or rather, what was wrong with her recently? Drink, Qin Siding said again. All right, I'll drink. Shi Nianj quickly picked up the milk. It was indeed the brand she usually drank. There were many brands of milk in the school supermarket. She usually drank this brand, and he also bought this brand. It was a familiar taste, but it was also a warmth that she was not familiar with. Chapter 1479. As she drank the milk, she quietly raised her head to look at the podium. Teacher Zhao came in to prepare for class. She quickly took 2 sips. Drink slowly. It's a little hot, Qin Siding said. You, but the teacher is here, Shi Nianj said softly as she swallowed the hot milk in her mouth. I'm fine, Qin Siding answered again. If he said it was fine, then it was really fine. Teacher Zhao only glanced at her. Seeing that she was about to finish the milk, he only glared at her, reminding her to drink it quickly. This time, Shi Nianj drank even faster. After drinking it, because her mouth was hot, she quickly stuck out her tongue and took 2 light breaths. Then she turned to look at Qin Siding with a smile. Qin Siding turned to see her sticking out her tongue and smiling mischievously at him. His gaze landed on her slightly red lips and he retracted his gaze. His gaze landed on the podium. Shi Nianj did not feel that there was anything wrong. She retracted her gaze and quickly put down the empty milk bottle, preparing to focus on the class. However, the teacher was teaching in front of her. She could not help but think that if in Qin Siding's heart, she was the same as everyone else, she would definitely smash a milk bottle on his head and repeat everything that had happened today. She would let everyone know that Qin Siding was really, really good to her. Taking the opportunity when the teacher turned to write on the blackboard, Shi Nianj tilted her head and leaned close to Qin Siding to whisper, "Did you already remember the brand of milk I like to drink?" He actually answered. Although it was very soft and light, he really answered. Shi Nianj instantly felt her entire heart tremble. It trembled until it was sore and painful. It was the indescribable feeling of being smashed down by joy. She felt everything. Right now, she could not think about why he would remember this, or why he would go out to buy milk for her because she was sleeping. He even carefully asked the supermarket auntie to heat it up and bring it back. She just felt that everyone's misunderstanding of such a warm person like Qin Siding was too deep. How was he cold? He was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He was definitely a super invincible warm man. He was really worthy of being liked, okay? Those female classmates who were secretly in love with him really had the same taste as her. After class, Shirniange lowered her head to look at the empty milk bottle she had placed below. She felt as though she was about to completely fall into Qin Siding's hands. He likes me, right? At the end of the day, he did not reject her nor did he hate her. Was he used to her, or did he like her a little? Or was it just because of the friendship between desk mates? After all, they had been sitting together for more than a semester, more than half a year. When they went to the school cafeteria for lunch, Xiao Xiaoqing raised her hand and waved it in front of Shirniange's eyes. Come back to your senses. Almighty Qin's cup of milk has completely taken your soul away. You've been foolishly happy all morning. Shirniange looked at her and smiled. She picked up her chopsticks to eat. It looks like it's going to rain tonight. Look at the sky. It's been cloudy for a few hours. Zhao Xiaoqing turned to look out the window of the cafeteria. It's almost summer. It's almost the rainy season. Only then did Shirniange remember. I woke up too early in the morning and didn't watch the weather forecast. I forgot to bring an umbrella. Then why don't you ask the driver to drive you back? Don't walk on the road tonight. It's been cloudy all day. It'll probably rain heavily. We'll see. It might not rain. Don't catch a cold again. The last time you caught a cold, you took a few days off. It's getting closer and closer to the college entrance examination. If you take another leave, Teacher Zhao will really talk to you. Shirniange did not speak. She just glanced at the weather outside. She wondered if Qin Siding had brought an umbrella. It seemed like men would not be so careful and meticulous as to specially look at the weather forecast in the morning. If it was him, he probably wouldn't look at it either. He probably didn't bring it either. As expected, it began to rain outside in the afternoon, but it was not too heavy. It was just a shower. Shirniange was still praying that it would not rain after school. In the end, the rain continued until the sky turned dark. At 9:30 p.m., although the rain was not heavy, it was not officially summer yet. The temperature was a little cold, and there were still some raindrops floating outside. It was already so late, and Uncle Qin had a lot of things to do recently. Usually, when her parents were not in the country, Uncle Qin would only occasionally come over to take care of her. Most of the time, he would be on half vacation. However, as long as she called, he would immediately come over. It was already so late. Uncle Qin was probably at home with his wife and child. She really did not want to disturb him. She followed Qin Siding out. When they arrived outside the school, a cold breeze blew past. Before she could shiver, a school uniform was suddenly draped over her body. This school uniform also had a faint mint smell that belonged to Qin Siding. She was very familiar with this smell and remembered it after smelling it once. Shirniange turned around and saw that Qin Siding was only wearing a light-colored short-sleeved t-shirt. The school uniform had already been draped over her. Aren't you cold? She quickly wanted to return the clothes to him, but the moment she took them off, she felt that it was indeed a little cold outside. Quickly put them back on. Qin Siding did not take it. He had already walked down the stairs in front of the teaching building and calmly said, "Wear them." "I don't need it. I'm wearing clothes inside, and I'm also wearing the school uniform. Don't just let me wear them. Don't catch a cold." Shirniange did not walk as fast as him. She jogged and quickly chased after him. "Quick, I'll give you the clothes." Qin Siding did not take it. He only glanced back at her. With just a glance, Shirnian's hand paused. She immediately obediently put the clothes on herself and then looked at him. Only then did she see that the temperature in his eyes had eased. In fact, she had been sleeping in the morning and thinking about what had happened in the morning in the afternoon. She had hardly looked at Enchanting. Now that she was walking by his side, although it was still drizzling, it should be fine if she did not hold an umbrella. The two of them walked together, but when they reached the school gate, he stopped and said, "Didn't you call the driver to pick you up?" "I forgot." She blinked. "It's raining. Don't walk so far tonight. Take a taxi back." He gestured with his chin to the taxi on the road ahead. Shirnian actually wanted to walk home with him like last night, but the weather last night was good. It was raining today, so she couldn't let him send her back in the rain. Even if he was willing, she couldn't do that, so she immediately answered, "All right, I'll take a taxi back." "What about you?" Enchanting did not answer. From the corner of her eye, she saw the familiar black business car parked there. Shirnian was immediately surprised. Chapter 1480. She really wanted to know why there seemed to be an inexplicable feeling between Enchanting and his mother. He seemed to be very disgusted and resistant, but his mother had been guarding him here, waiting for him. She must have been waiting for an opportunity to speak to him. After all, although this car had come a few times, it had only obediently parked outside the school gate. It did not affect his normal studies and life. In the past, Shirnian rarely heard others talk about the family affairs of other big families. She did not know how the Chen family was like. The only thing she knew was that the Chen family was one of the 4 big families in High City. She also knew that Enchanting's grandfather had a good reputation in the industry and was very popular. He was an elder respected by many people. As for the rest, she had never heard of it. Even though she liked him very much now, she did not want to pry into his personal life. Unless he was willing to tell her. "Then I'll take a taxi back." Shirnian waved at him. Coincidentally, there were a few taxis in front of her. She stopped one and sat in. She turned back to look out the window. Enchanting was standing there looking in her direction. After confirming that she had safely boarded the car, he retracted his gaze. He was really, really good. He was so good that she clearly liked him very much, but she did not even dare to say the word like. When did she, Shirnian, become so timid? In the beginning, when she liked him and chased after him, she was very enthusiastic. Why was it that now that Enchanting treated her so well, she was immersed in such gentleness and could not extricate herself? She was afraid that if she did anything wrong or alarmed him, everything would disappear. She could not bear to disappear. So if she could maintain this way until the college entrance examination, it would be good, wouldn't it? But what about after the college entrance examination? Shirnian leaned her head against the car window and looked out at the rainy night. If she studied medicine and he went to America's Polytechnic University or other major universities in other cities in the country, the time before the college entrance examination was getting shorter and shorter was equivalent to a countdown between her and him. When she returned home and entered the door, Shirnian was about to put down her school bag when she realized that she was still wearing Enchanting's school uniform. She hurriedly took off his school uniform as if it was a treasure and carried it into the room. After taking a shower, she stared at his clothes. Usually, Auntie Xiang brought her clothes over. Those that could be washed would be washed at home. For example, things like school uniforms that needed to be dry cleaned or washed in other ways were all taken out by Auntie Xiang. There seemed to be an ironing machine at home. Anyway, during the evening self-study session, she had already finished most of her homework. There was only one math paper left to do. She directly put the uniform into the washing machine and added her favorite detergent and fabric softener. While the automatic washing machine was running, she finished the test paper. Half an hour later, after the uniform was washed, she picked up the dryer and dried it until it was almost dry. Then, she took his uniform to the room to iron it. In fact, the school uniform didn't need to be ironed at all, but she didn't want Cheen Sighting's clothes to become wrinkled in her hands. The quality of the uniform was actually a very ordinary material. After ironing it twice, it was very smooth. After carefully doing it, she hung the coat in a position where she could see it from the bed. When she laid down, she looked at the two school uniforms hanging together. One was a size 185 for men, and the other was a size 165 for women. When the big and small ones were placed together, it looked like two gentle people were intimately pressed together. Shirnianj covered her face on the bed as she looked at it. She picked up the pillow and buried her face in it. The next day, when she arrived at school, Shirnianj specially observed Cheen Sighting's expression. She saw that he seemed to be in a good mood and was not as depressed as she had imagined. In that case, although he had seen his mother last night, he should not have had any unhappiness. She was relieved. When she arrived in the morning, she had placed his school uniform neatly on his table. When Cheen Sighting walked over, he saw the school uniform on the table. "I washed it last night. I can wear it." Shirnianj was like a child who had done a good deed and was waiting for an adult to praise her. She widened her eyes and looked at it. Cheen Sighting's handsome brows moved slightly. He picked up the school uniform and put it on. Seeing him put on the school uniform that she had personally washed and ironed without saying a word, Shirnianj could not help but recall the scene of the two uniforms hanging together last night. Her face suddenly turned red. She turned her face away to avoid being seen by him. She lowered her head and pretended to be busy checking her homework from last night. But why was she blushing today? Just because the two uniforms were hanging together last night, and she accidentally had a dream? She dreamed that Cheen Sighting kissed her. Originally, she was quite calm when facing him, but today, she inexplicably felt a sense of shyness. She always felt that the dream was too real. It was so real that when she opened her eyes in the morning and saw his clothes still hanging there, she felt that it was actually not a dream, causing her to be distracted early in the morning. When a person's thoughts were wandering, it was easy for them to casually draw out their thoughts. Shirnianj did not notice that in the morning math class, everyone was immersed in solving the problems and drawing out the key points. However, she had unconsciously written more than 10 Cheen Sighting on the piece of paper in front of her. In fact, she had accidentally written a few of these during self-study in the morning. At first, she did not take it too seriously and only used the book to suppress it. Right now, she was actually continuing to draw out his name. When Shirnianj finally realized what she was doing, her face instantly turned red. Oh my God, what was she doing? Earlier, when the teacher asked her to circle the key points in the book, she was still lowering her head to write. Cheen Sighting seemed to have reached out to take her book away. He should have helped her circle the key points, so he must have seen it when he turned his head. Had he seen her writing his name on the toilet paper? Ah. 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 Let her die. She did not dare to look at the person beside her for the entire class. When she heard the bell ring, she directly laid her head on the table, wishing that her forehead could make a sound. Cheen Sighting was shocked by her head hitting the table. He turned his head to look and saw Shirnianj lying there, her ears red. Shirnianj was vexed. Did he really see her writing his name? As she lay on the table, the more she thought about it, the more uneasy she became. She suddenly turned her eyes and met Cheen Sighting's. Their eyes met, and Cheen Sighting raised his cold brows to look at her. Shirnianj was still lying on the table. As she turned her head, a corner of the piece of paper filled with his name leaked out. His name was clearly written on it. Chin sighting glanced at it, then at her, and then quietly retracted his gaze. Chapter 1481. Outside the window, it began to drizzle again. It was about to officially enter summer. When the wind blew, it was no longer too cold. It still carried the fragrance of summer grass. The drizzle gurgled down, as though it was scratching one's heart. It was very itchy. The young man and the young girl's thoughts were gentle and warm with the drizzle. All things grew. Mom, you really don't have to worry about me. Why do you have so many things to worry about? Nianj took advantage of the Sunday afternoon break to lie on the sofa at home to answer Mrs. Yang Jinjin's international call. Listening to her old mother's nagging, she placed the phone by her ear and turned on the speakerphone. She lay there and said, I just had a small cold some time ago. Wasn't it the flu at that time? Everyone is easily infected. Your daughter just caught a cold. Uncle Chin must have exaggerated when he told you. I'm not that weak. I only had a fever for 1 day. For the next 2 days, I only rested at home. I didn't have a high fever for 3 days. I only had a fever for the next 2 days. I didn't have a high fever for 3 days. How can I not worry? There are clearly so many people at home, but you insist on living alone near the school. I think you should let the people at home move in with you. Mrs. Yang Jinjin was really worried. No, I came out to live alone because I want to be quiet. Auntie Xiang will come over occasionally to take care of my daily life. Just pack a bunch of delicious food for me and put it in the refrigerator. Let the other aunties be busy at home. I don't need anyone here. Besides, your daughter has already grown up. It's indeed time for her to get used to her own life. Other people's daughters are all thinking about how to get closer to their parents. Only you, girl, think about living alone every day. Mrs. Yang Jinjin snorted. You've had a fever for 3 days in a row. Your mother's heart aches to death. How can there be 3 days? Only the first day was a fever. Later on, the 2 of us only rested at home. In fact, I was going to school the next day, but Uncle Chin refused to let me. He even called Auntie Xiang to watch me and asked me to rest at home. In the end, I still had to coax and pester the teacher. I asked the teacher to call them and finally let me out of the house. Nianj chuckled. Don't worry. Just focus on your work outside. Shida Group has been supported by you and Dad for so many years. Just take care of your health. Don't worry about me. After all, I've already grown up. How's your relationship with the little classmate you like? Her mother couldn't hold back her gossipy spirit. Nianj was lying on the sofa. She had almost fallen asleep from answering the phone. When she heard this, she opened her eyes and suddenly became extremely energetic. She looked at the ceiling and blinked. Mom, when you and my dad were together, you were the one who chased after him first, right? I remember hearing my dad boast about it before. Ms. Yang Jinjin. Do you believe his nonsense? But there are many old servants at home who can testify. Back then, the Shi family was just a small shop in the hands of the older generation. My father, the young master of the Shi family, was also quite down and out. Everyone said that you chased after him. Madame Yang Jinjin had a headache. Mom, if you like a boy, how can you pursue him? The prerequisite is that the other party must like you. Otherwise, a one-sided love won't bear any fruit, silly girl. I think he likes me, but I'm not sure. After a moment of silence, she said, the way I chased after your father, cough, let's not talk about it. Although her mother did not say anything, Nianj had heard the aunties at home whispering about her parents. It seemed like her mother had asked her father to travel abroad together. When they returned, her mother was pregnant, and she was the one in her stomach. Did she mean to take the initiative? In that era, her mother had the courage to pursue true love, but at that time, her parents were already in their 20s. They were at the age of marriage. She was only 18 years old now. They were still students. She didn't dare to think about anything else. That night, she had only dreamed that Enchanting had kissed her. She had been embarrassed for a long time. You're not far from the college entrance examination, right? Is the little classmate you like also planning to study medicine? He probably won't learn it. It can also be said that he definitely won't study medicine. Then the two of you don't have much time left. What are you afraid of? If you want to confess, just confess. If it's awkward in the end, at most, we won't contact each other after graduation. Aren't you usually very bold? Why are you so timid recently? Are you still my biological mother? You actually took the initiative to encourage your daughter to confess. She really wanted to confess. In fact, even if she didn't say it, Enchanting definitely knew that she liked him. However, the two of them hadn't exposed this layer yet. Perhaps it was because he knew that no matter what the outcome was, they couldn't be together. Her mother's words were easy to say, but how could it be that easy to do? If her confession failed, she would be sad and uncomfortable until the college entrance examination. Then, she would face a situation where she would completely separate from him and never contact him again. If her confession succeeded, she might face a long-distance relationship after the exam. That would be even more torturous, and it probably wouldn't last long. Instead, it would destroy the initial beauty. Mom, back then, you ate my dad so hard because you were pregnant with me, right? Enchanting didn't know what she was thinking and just said it casually. I guess so. Enchanting vaguely felt that this topic was not good. I'm an adult now. If I really like someone, can I use your method? For example, pouncing on a male god or something. Enchanting. Don't even think about it. Madame Enchanting's voice instantly shrank. How old are you? What nonsense did the aunties at home say to you? You're not allowed to learn, understand? You're still a child. If you keep thinking nonsense, your father and I will go back and break your legs. Enchanting was really just saying that. Even if she had 100 guts, she wouldn't dare to pounce on Enchanting. She blinked and smiled. I know. I'm still young. I don't dare. Thank you, Mom. Don't worry. I'm rational. I'll protect myself. TSK, I think the little classmate you like should be the one to be protected. Enchanting, I'm not talking to you anymore. I don't have any holidays recently. It's not easy for me to have an afternoon off on Sunday. I've been calling you. I want to sleep for a while. All right, take good care of yourself. When it comes to relationships, you must be rational. It's not long before the college entrance examination. Don't make us worry. And, got it. Enchanting hung up the phone, turned around, and buried her face in the sofa. Chapter 1482. Enchanting really lay on the sofa and fell asleep. In her dream, after the college entrance examination, Enchanting went to the best famous school with the results of the provincial top scorer. She stood on the empty seat with the admission notice from the medical university and watched as the people beside her left. She slept for a long time, and her dream was also very long. When she suddenly opened her eyes, the sky outside was already dark. It was really not a happy dream. She turned over on the sofa and saw that her phone was still by the side. There was something in her heart that kept hanging on to her, causing her mood to fluctuate. It was very uncomfortable. She wanted to confirm something with Chin's sighting, but she wasn't sure. However, if she didn't do anything, she was afraid that she would miss something. Chin's sighting, this person, was probably poisonous, making people addicted to it and unable to quit. She thought for a moment, then edited a message and sent it over. Chin's sighting. In fact, she did it on purpose. She liked to call his name first to see his reaction. Would he reply with a question mark, an in, or would he call her name? No matter what he replied, it would be a small joy for her. However, this time, he did not reply with a question mark or an N. A few minutes later, Chin's sighting replied to her, "What's wrong?" Nianj held her phone and smiled foolishly. It was really, really beautiful. 3 words. She climbed on the sofa and happily replied to him, "What are you doing? Wouldn't this seem too intimate?" But he clearly knew that she liked him. She had never hidden anything. Since he did not avoid her under such circumstances, it meant that he did not hate her. In fact, she also wanted to know if he would accept her if she became closer to him. To what extent would he accept her? Her phone vibrated. He replied. Nianj smiled and clicked on it. She saw that Chin's sighting had replied to her, in the library. Library? At this time, Nianj had only noticed that the sky had turned dark. She lowered her head to look at the time on her phone. It was already 7:30 p.m. She immediately sat up on the sofa with her phone in her hand. Which library? The school library. Chin's sighting replied, Provincial library. He went to the provincial library during the afternoon break. He's really a top student. Usually, they finished school quite late. If he was still in the library, he probably wouldn't be back too early. She got up to wash her face and change her clothes. Since it was the weekend and she wasn't going to school, she didn't need to wear the school uniform. She put on a white knee-length skirt, which was as white as the white shirt he usually wore. Then she put on a pair of white sneakers and a baseball cap of the same color. She picked up her bag and left the house. Uncle Chin wasn't around today. She took a taxi outside and went straight to the provincial library. After entering, he found that there were quite a lot of people inside. After asking the librarian where the revision books were, he went directly to the upper floor and went to the revision materials area. After walking through a few rows of bookshelves for a while, she walked forward to a bookshelf and suddenly saw Chin's sighting standing there and picking up a book. Today, he was wearing a simple, light-colored linen t-shirt and a pair of old grayish-blue jeans. His back view looked as straight as jade, and his clean and good-looking fingers were flipping through the pages of the book. Seeing this, Nianj was too embarrassed to disturb him. However, she had specially taken a taxi here so late at night. If she didn't go and talk to him, why did she come here so late at night? She really missed him very much if she couldn't see him for an afternoon. She couldn't imagine how much longing she would have to face after graduation. Liking someone was really a kind of sweet and sour torture. Nianj leaned against the bookshelf and looked at him. The moment the clean young man seemed to have sensed something and suddenly turned back, she accidentally met his gaze before she could dodge. Chin's sighting looked at her and then saw that there was no one else behind her. His gaze then landed on her again. However, he did not ask anything. He casually picked up the book he had just read and turned to look for other books. Nianj did not speak much, nor did she explain. After all, the library needed to be quiet. If she was discovered, so be it. She followed behind him and imitated him to pick books. In the end, when she picked up a physics revision book, Chin's sighting glanced at her. Do you understand it? Her intelligence was once again looked down upon. Nianj turned back to look at him with some bitterness. Even if I don't understand, I have to read it. After all, the college entrance examination is coming up. He turned around and continued to look for books. Without looking back, his voice rang out. There are medical books 4 rows away. If you're bored, you can go look for them. There's no need to force yourself to look through the physics revision questions here. Hearing that there was actually a medical book, Cherniange immediately perked up. She turned around and rushed to the place 4 rows away. As expected, after walking out 4 rows, she saw that the rows were filled with medical books. She quickly found a few books that interested her and carried them back. Seeing that Qin Sighting had already taken a few books and sat down in front of the row of empty tables, she leaned over and sat down opposite him. There was coffee in the provincial library. She stood up and bought 2 cups of coffee. Without speaking, she gently placed them by his hand. Qin Sighting glanced at her and then glanced at her. Seeing the medical books in front of her, he asked, "Do you like studying medicine?" "N." This was not the first time he had asked this question, but every time, she would answer seriously and nod. This time, Qin Sighting did not say anything else. He only curled his lips slightly. "That's good too. You should be able to pass the medical school exam. In the future, saving lives and helping the injured will all depend on you, Dr. Sher." It turned out that Qin Sighting knew how to joke. Cherniange's face was full of joy. Without thinking, she suddenly said, "Actually, male doctors are also very handsome. Almighty Qin, have you never thought of studying medicine? With your ability to accept things, if you study medicine, you'll probably learn everything very quickly. Furthermore, you're very strict. If you study medicine, you'll definitely be a very good doctor in the future." Qin Sighting picked up the cup of coffee by his hand and had just placed it by his lips. He had not drunk it yet. Hearing her words, he glanced at her again. She met his gaze with a face full of smiles. It was already dark outside, but she was like a little sun. He chuckled and put down the coffee cup. His slender fingers gently touched the edge of the cup. He suddenly said in a low voice, "You want me to study medicine?" "Ah." Originally, she just said it casually, but she didn't expect him to continue this topic. For a moment, she was caught off guard, and inexplicably felt as if her heart had been hit by something. It's the last day of the month. Sweetly, I'm begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1483. Would he consider studying medicine? However, with his situation, he could clearly go to a better school. Coupled with the Qin family's strength, he would definitely become a top big shot in the financial world in the future. What she wanted was to sit in the hospital's consultation room and smile at every patient who came to see her. She wanted to help them solve all kinds of difficult and complicated diseases. It couldn't be said to be a great dream like saving lives and helping the injured. In fact, it was just a hobby, a deep-rooted hobby influenced by her grandfather since she was young. Qin Sighting could take a better path. The path of being a doctor was not worthy of him. Cherniange broke the unrealistic fantasies in her heart and raised her eyes to smile at him. "I'm joking. In the future, you can be CEO Qin, a scientist, a chemist, a physicist, or a leader in the business and financial world. A job like being a doctor isn't suitable for you." The young girl, who had a hopeful expression earlier, instantly regained her rationality. Her emotions were all expressed on her face. There was no need to ask to know that her face was filled with, "I don't want to drag you from the Golden Highland to the bitter abyss of the medical industry." Qin Sighting did not say anything more. He retracted his gaze and continued to read the book in front of him. Cherniange picked up the coffee and took a sip. She then lowered her head to look at the coffee in front of her. She gently exhaled and calmed her heart. Yes, she couldn't ask him to study medicine with her because of her selfishness. Qin Siding's future was bright. It was completely different from her small goal. Therefore, since it was impossible for them to be together in the future, she should restrain her love for him and maintain their current friendly deskmate relationship. Otherwise, after the college entrance examination, she would probably be depressed. After flipping through a few pages, she closed the book. Well, it's getting late. I'll borrow these books to read at home. Almighty Qin, you should go back early. The world outside is chaotic now. It's not safe for good-looking boys to walk outside too late. With that, she stood up and met Qin Siding's gaze. She hardened her heart and tried her best to suppress the surging emotions in her heart. She picked up the books and left. Qin Siding sat there and turned his head to look at her back without looking back. His eyes were light, but there seemed to be a clear stream hidden in them, trickling past. After returning to Lishui Villa, Shinianj placed the books on the sofa and sat by the side to stare at them. What was wrong with her today? Wasn't he usually fine? Qin Siding had just asked her if she wanted him to study medicine. If he didn't like her at all, he definitely wouldn't continue this topic with her. He was clearly asking her. But why didn't she answer? Why did he retreat when his opponent took a step towards him? This shouldn't be her. However, the path of medicine was not suitable for him. It was already the middle of April. In another 2 months, it would be the college entrance examination. Could it be that she wanted Qin Siding to give up his bright future and beg him to study medicine with her for the sake of this deskmate relationship for more than 60 days? Shinianj lay on the sofa in frustration, her hands clenched into fists. She still didn't feel relieved. She kicked the medical books off the sofa and continued to bury her face in the back of the sofa. So sad. His heart ached and ached. She felt as though she had missed a relationship she wanted the most, but she couldn't. Her mother was right. They were still young. No one could be responsible for the other party's future. Now, she could willfully beg him to study medicine with her. What about in the future? That was the young master of the Qin family. His future should not be trapped in the hospital's consultation room and operating table. His future should be bright and dazzling. In the end, Shinianj fell asleep on the sofa. When she was awake, she did not feel much. However, if her heart was blocked, she dreamed of the day of graduation and Qin Siding's back view. She actually cried out of grievance. As she cried, she felt that the sofa was wet and cold. She abruptly opened her eyes and sniffed, only to realize that she had been lying on the sofa all night and had even woken up crying. She quickly got up and picked up her phone to check the time. It was 3 a.m. She sniffed again, got up, and returned to the bedroom to sleep. She slept until dawn, took a shower, and rushed out of the door. When she arrived under the tree outside the school, she hesitated for a moment but still couldn't bear to give up the opportunity to walk into the school with him every day. She stood there and waited. In the end, she waited for 20 minutes. It was almost time for morning self-study. Qin Siding's figure could not be seen at the intersection ahead. Shinianj looked at the time again. Shinianj looked at the time again. That shouldn't be the case. Qin Siding usually wouldn't be late. Recently, he had been taking this road. If he wanted to change roads, he should have sent her a message. Besides, he basically never changed roads unless his mother's car appeared. However, that time, he also said that he would come and ask her to wait. She hesitantly clicked on Qin Siding's number. After a few minutes, she dialed. She had never called him. She had only sent him text messages. Suddenly calling, she heard that her heartbeat seemed to slow down along with the beeping sound. It was so slow that she could only hear her heartbeat and the beeping sound on the phone. She could not hear the sounds of her classmates chatting and walking in front of her. The beeping sound continued for a long time, but no one answered. Shirnianj frowned, not knowing what had happened. She hoped that because it was Monday today, Chin Sighting had stayed up too late in the library last night and had just overslept. She sat in her seat and waited for the entire morning, but Chin Sighting did not come. When she went to eat with Xiao Xiaoqing in the afternoon, she did not even have the mood to eat properly. It tasted like chewing wax. After eating, she called Chin Sighting. Previously, she had sent so many messages, but she had never called. When she called in the morning, he did not pick up. Now, in fact, she didn't know what she was feeling. Was it because his phone wasn't by his side or because he didn't want to pick it up? If Chin Sighting didn't come for the whole day and didn't contact her via phone or text message, Shirnianj would probably not be able to sleep tonight. On the way back to the classroom from the cafeteria, Xiao Xiaoqing could tell that Shirnianj was not in a good mood. She also knew that this was probably the reason why Almighty Chin did not come today, so she did not ask much. She only changed the topic along the way, trying to distract Shirnianj. When she returned to the classroom, she did not see Chin Sighting. Shirnianj sat in her seat, feeling especially flustered and restless. This feeling was really too bad. Why did he not come to school? Chapter 1484. At 1:00 in the afternoon, Chin Sighting finally arrived. At that time, Shirnianj was lying on the desk, staring at her phone. When she heard footsteps approaching her, she subconsciously raised her head. When she saw that it was Chin Sighting, she immediately sat up. Chin Sighting. She called out to him softly. And Chin Sighting answered. Why didn't you come in the morning? Shirnianj quickly looked at him from top to bottom, afraid that something had happened to him. Otherwise, why would he not appear in the morning? As she looked at him, she said, I called you, but you didn't pick up. Chin Sighting sat down. I don't have my phone on me. Shirnianj wanted to say something, but she opened her mouth and did not say anything. She looked at him for a long time before her gaze landed on his left hand. His left hand was wrapped in bandages. The white bandages were glaring, and there seemed to be some unwashed blood on his fingers. She instantly felt a sharp pain in her heart. It was so painful that she could hardly speak. What happened to your hand? She stared at him for a long time before finding her voice and asking. Chin Sighting did not answer. Coincidentally, the bell rang, so he did not speak again. Shirnianj looked at his hand. She could not understand why his hand was injured so early in the morning when he was still fine in the library last night. Looking at the bandages and the fact that his left hand could not move, she knew that his injury was not light. Did something happen to him this morning or last night? He didn't even send a message or call. Now that he was here, he didn't say a word. How could she be at ease when he was so injured? When Shirnianj heard the teacher enter, she retracted her gaze, but her heart felt uncomfortable. Her heart ached and even felt a little angry. As a result, she did not want to ask a single word. She did not want to know the reason. She lay on the table and no longer looked at him. Chin Sighting heard the noise when she took out her pen. He glanced at her, but he could only see the back of her ponytail. He retracted his gaze. After a while, he glanced at her again. Shirnianj did not dare to look at Chin Sighting's left hand for the entire afternoon. Even when she wanted to go to the toilet with Xiao Xiaoqing after class, she did not say a word to him. She only went out with Xiao Xiaoqing when Chin Sighting stood up. When he returned, he glanced at her. She did not say anything and sat down when he stood up. She still did not want to talk to him. But when he got up, she could see the wound on his left hand from a closer distance. Looking at the bandage, there seemed to be some faint traces of blood seeping out of his palm. Her heart hurt as if it had been pierced by a needle. Every hole that was pierced by the needle was piercing her sharply, making her feel uncomfortable. Before school ended, Shirnianj finished copying the homework the teacher had given her. She tore it off and placed it on Chin Sighting's table, but she still did not speak to him. Chin Sighting glanced at the homework Shirnianj had helped him with. He did not ask her to help, but even though he was injured on his left hand, it was still more difficult for him to hold the notes and papers and write so many words than usual. She silently wrote a copy for him and threw it to him without a word. She was clearly concerned, but the anger in her voice was too obvious. Chin Sighting did not say anything, but he gratefully folded the homework and placed it in his book. He could not use one hand. No matter what he did, he could only use his right hand. It was actually very inconvenient. Shirnianj frowned and reached out to help him put the book into his bag. She then zipped up his bag. Neither of them spoke. School ended neither too early nor too late today. School ended at 8:00. As usual, the two of them walked on the road in front of them. Usually, they didn't talk much during the 20 minutes after school, but today, the atmosphere was especially silent. This was because Shirnianj did not speak. She did not even say a word. However, Chin Sighting could feel her gaze. In the heavy atmosphere, Shirnianj would occasionally turn to look at Chin Sighting's face. She tried her best not to look at his hand. Otherwise, her heart would really hurt to death. Every time Chin Sighting felt her gaze, he would turn to look at her. His expression was very calm, and his gaze at Shirnianj was also very calm. Shirnianj could not figure out what was going on between such a gentle and outstanding person and his mother. How did his hand get injured like this in just one night? Halfway through the journey, Shirnianj had long forgotten the rationality she had when she returned home from the library yesterday. She could not bear to really not say anything along the way. After all, she had waited for him for the entire morning and did not speak in the afternoon. After a while, she would not be able to see him again. She asked in a muffled voice, "What happened to your hand?" Chin Sighting glanced at her again and answered, "I was cut by the broken glass. It's a superficial wound. It's nothing. Nothing." If it wasn't serious, he could have simply bandaged it in the morning. Why would he not come to school for the entire morning? She pinched the hem of her school uniform and continued to ask in a muffled voice, "How did you hurt yourself? Did you hurt yourself? Or, did something happen?" Chin Sighting pondered for a moment, then smiled and did not answer. Shirnianj waited for a while but did not hear his answer. She knew that he did not want to say. "In a while, I'll be taking another path home. School ended quite early today. Where do you live? Do you have any bandages or gauze at home? The gauze on your hand is already soaked in blood. You should bandage it again. I'll go to your place and help you bandage it." Chin Sighting stopped in his tracks. As though he had thought of something, he looked at the intersection that led to her home and asked, "You know how to bandage?" "Yes." "Have you forgotten that I'm going to study medicine? I've been by my grandfather's side since I was young. I knew how to bandage external injuries when I was 12 or 13 years old. I'm even more professional than many nurses in the clinic." Speaking of which, Shirnianj felt that she finally had something to help him with. Chin Sighting nodded. Shirnianj waited to follow him. However, when they reached the intersection, Chin Sighting did not continue forward. Instead, he walked toward the intersection that led to Lishui Villa. She looked at him in surprise and followed. Let's go to your place," he said. Shirnianj was surprised. He was going to her place. She did have a medicine box at home, and there was no lack of bandages. Ever since she was young, her family had never lacked any medicine. After all, there was an old doctor at home. These were all fixed habits in her life. However, she did not expect him to choose to go to her place. Uncle Chin was not around tonight, and Auntie Xiang was still at the Shi family's house. In other words, Chin Siding was going to her house in the middle of the night. Chapter 1485. At the thought of this, Shi Nian's little heart was about to jump out. Seeing that she was still standing behind in a daze, Chin Siding glanced at her again. His uninjured right hand suddenly reached out, grabbed her wrist, and led her toward Li Shui Villa. Before Shi Nian could return to her senses, she was stunned again. Her heart pounded violently. When he realized that she was still standing on the spot, Chin Siding turned back to look at her and frowned lightly. "Aren't you going to bandage me?" Heavens! He was really going to her house. "That's right, then why aren't you leaving?" "I don't have a medical kit at home, nor do I have anything that can be used," he said. Before she could reply, he glanced at her again. "Don't you have an auntie and a driver at home? Is there no one else at home?" Should she say yes or no? Normally speaking, there was definitely no one at home, but she felt that he felt that there was someone at home, so he didn't mind. He just went to bandage his wound. If she said that there was no one at home, he might not go. But when he arrived later, he would still find that there was no one there. Forget it, she would follow her heart. Anyway, she wanted him to go. She did not answer. She just looked at him and said, "You're right. I have a medical kit at home. Let's go." On the way home, Shi Nian looked at her wrist that he had just held and then at Chin Siding's figure walking by her side. She felt that the amount of information was a little too much. Her brain was not enough and she was about to explode. He actually took the initiative to say that he would go to her place and even agreed to let her bandage him. In other words, he allowed her to see the wound on his hand. He did not treat her as an outsider and guard against her. When they returned home, Chin Siding saw that the lights in her villa were off. Only a row of automatic sensor lights in the front yard lit up when they approached. "There's no one at home," he said. "Ah, there was. Auntie Xiang and Uncle Chin usually come over. Tonight, maybe they have something to do at home and thought that I only left school at 9:30, so they're not here." Shi Nian lied with some difficulty, but she instinctively felt that she could not deceive him. Chin Siding only glanced at the pitch-black window and did not continue asking. When she pushed open the carved door in front of the villa and turned back to look at him, he looked at her back and walked in. She quickly walked into the villa, picked up the remote control in front of the door, and turned on all the lights in the villa. In an instant, the light shone brightly. Shi Nian did not want to waste too much time. She really wanted to see how injured his hand was. "Sit down." She pointed to a small bar near the dining table. The bar was designed by the original owner of the house. She could occasionally sit there and drink juice. Anyway, she had never drunk alcohol at home. Chin Siding did not say anything else and went over. Shi Nian rushed upstairs and took out the medicine box from the bedroom. She then carried the medicine box over and went to the small bar counter. As she opened the medicine box, she said, "Put your hand on it. I'll open it to take a look first. Do you need to disinfect it and apply medicine? I think there's blood seeping out. Hasn't the bleeding stopped when you went to the hospital?" "It stopped. I think my left hand moved when I picked up something in the afternoon, so there's some blood." Chin Siding was very calm, as though he really treated her as a doctor and would answer any question. Right now, Shi Nian could not care too much about her emotions. She lowered her head and carefully removed the gauze on his hand. Then she saw that his slender fingers were still stained with dried blood. There were several wounds on his palm. It looked like he had really been cut by glass shards. Some of the wounds were quite deep. How did you get injured like this? She immediately frowned in heartache. She lowered her head to take a closer look and then took out a disinfectant cotton from the medicine box to wipe the blood and wounds on his palm. As though he could not feel the pain of the disinfectant, Enchanting sat there expressionlessly. Looking at her serious expression, he said, "This morning, I crushed the glass." Ah. Enchanting's mind was in a mess. She raised her head to look at him and saw that he did not seem to be lying. It was a glass cup. This was not a TV show. How could he crush it with his bare hands? Unless he was really angry or something had happened that would make him hold back all the strength in his hand, how could he just crush it? Judging from the extent of the injury on his palm, it was likely that the broken glass was in his hand, but he did not let go. She asked in disbelief, "Why? If it's broken, then it's broken. Why aren't you letting go? Why are you still holding it in your hand?" Enchanting looked straight into her eyes. "It's just a superficial wound. I think the artery in my hand was injured, which is why the bleeding is more serious. Actually, it's not very painful." "Not very painful. This is a hand. Even your fingers have small scratches. Don't you have any pain nerves?" Enchanting gritted her teeth in anger. Thankfully, his bones and nerves were not injured. Enchanting inexplicably thought that with his beautiful hands, if he were to become a doctor, how beautiful would he look when he picked up the scalpel? If his nerves were injured, he would never be able to learn medicine in this lifetime. Why did she think of learning medicine again? She held her breath and continued to disinfect and clear the blood. However, she was indeed very good at bandaging. When she was young, she often practiced with the old servants at home. Even when the gardener accidentally cut his hand, she would take the initiative to help bandage it. As time passed, her bandaging skills were really better than many intern nurses. But this was Enchanting's hand. No matter how well she bandaged it, her hand was still trembling visibly. After disinfecting it, she went to the medicine box to search for medicine suitable for him. Enchanting's gaze also landed on her face. Sensing that he was looking at her, Enchanting's heart began to race again. There was no one at home right now. It was already so late, and the sky outside was dark. She suddenly recalled someone who said that a man and a woman were alone. Her hand rummaged through the medicine box. After searching for a long time, she suddenly forgot what she should be looking for. In the end, she picked up a cold film and was stunned. His hand was injured. What cold film was she going to use? She quickly put it back and turned to see that Enchanting was looking at her. He had clearly seen her stupid action earlier. Awkward. Agitated. It was really killing her. But right now, his palm was still injured. Right now, she felt that the hand in front of her had become especially precious. She quickly found the medicine and carefully applied it for him. What should she do? Her hand was actually trembling. She was clearly very professional, okay? Why was she trembling? On the first day of the month, I'm here to ask for monthly votes again, ha ha ha. Chapter 1486. Enchanting quietly patted her hands, trying to control the trembling of her hands. In the end, Enchanting suddenly laughed. My hand is injured like this. You're not the one in pain. Why are you trembling? Enchanting asked her. Nonsense, because this was Enchanting's hand. Enchanting did not speak. After bandaging his hand, she raised his hand and examined it. How is it? Is it comfortable? If it's uncomfortable, I'll wrap it again. Enchanting glanced at the hand she was holding and then at her pained and careful expression. He was not in a hurry to pull his hand back. Instead, he looked at her slightly reddened eyes. After thinking for a moment, he retracted his hand and did not say anything. Nianj knew that her performance might have been too obvious, because her heart really ached. His hand was injured like this. She quickly packed the medicine box and said, "Don't touch water for the next few days. If you don't want to go to the hospital, come to me every day to apply medicine and bandage it. By the way, the weather has been getting hotter recently. It's not good to keep wrapping your hand like this. That's all for today. Tomorrow, I'll go buy some better gauze to prevent the wound from healing." Qian sat there and did not speak. He only listened to her. When Nianj ran back to put the medicine box away in her slippers and then ran back to sit opposite him, he still maintained his posture with one hand on the small bar counter. Seeing her anxious expression, he smiled faintly. "If you're not willing to tell me the reason, I won't keep asking you." Nianj sat opposite him and looked at his left hand, which was wrapped very smoothly. "But in the future, if you can't come to school because of something, can you give me a call or send me a text message? I've really been worried all morning." Qian's handsome brows moved slightly. "You're so worried about me." "Of course, I've been waiting under the tree every day to enter the school gate with you. This morning, I didn't see you, and I was so anxious. Although I thought it was a little abrupt, I still called you, but you didn't pick up. Later, I couldn't get through to you." Nianj was very calm about the fact that she was anxious because of him. She had clearly suppressed her emotions yesterday, but at this moment, she could not hold it in. Qian chuckled and lowered his eyes to look at his own hand. He raised his hand and shook it gently. He smiled and said, "You wrapped it well. You're very professional, Dr. Shi." Although she knew that he was teasing her, Nianj still felt happy because of Qian's words. Earlier, her heartache because of him also improved slightly. Fortunately, it was only the hand that was injured, and the nerves in the hand were not injured. It was just a superficial injury, and it would heal in a few days. After that, the two of them seemed to have entered a state where there was nothing to talk about. However, Nianj did not want to ask him when he was leaving. At this moment, Qian glanced out. She thought that he was planning to leave after wrapping his hand. Her heart was filled with reluctance. She felt sour, but she wanted to keep something, but she found that she could not open her mouth. Could she ask him to stay at her house for a while longer? It was already 9:00 in the evening. No one lived in the villas opposite, so from this angle, it was dark outside. There was only a row of small street lamps outside the door. There was no one walking around. It was extremely quiet. No matter how bold she was still a girl. She could not say such words. An 18-year-old boy and girl were not as calm as they were when they were adults. They would be curious and expectant, but they would also be nervous and afraid to try. She used a brainless method to continue the topic. "Do you want something to drink?" Qian glanced at her. This was a small bar counter, and next to it was a wine cabinet. However, there were only a few bottles of red wine that Uncle Qian had placed here. The alcohol content was not high, and Nianj usually did not drink it. The other cabinets were empty. Afraid that he would misunderstand, she quickly said, "There are all kinds of fruit tea and drinks in the fridge. By the way, the fruit tea was made by Auntie Xiang. I brought it to school for you to drink. I remember that you liked it. She often came to make it. After 2 or 3 days in the fridge, the taste is even better than the first day. Do you want another cup?" Perhaps it was because Qian enjoyed the quiet atmosphere of such a night that he was not in a hurry to leave. He only looked at her expectant gaze and said, "All right, try it." At the very least, there was still time to taste the fruit tea. That meant he was not in a hurry to leave. Shirnianj immediately got up with a smile and rushed into the kitchen to open the fridge to make the fruit tea. When she was in the kitchen, she recalled the bowl of onion oil noodles that Chin Sighting had made last time. In an instant, she felt that she was locked in a bubble of happiness and did not want to go out at all. When she finished making the fruit tea and brought it out, she saw that Chin Sighting was still sitting there, but there was a book by his hand. It was the medical books she had brought back from the provincial library yesterday. She was not at home during the day. Auntie Xiang had probably come and helped her tidy up the house. She tidied up the books under the sofa and placed them on the small bar counter. Although she knew that he was just casually picking them up to take a look, Shirnian's heart skipped a few beats. The feeling of being touched by the person she liked was really wonderful. She walked over with the fruit tea and gently placed the cup by his side. "Try it." Chin Sighting's gaze landed on the title page of the medical book. He did not raise his head, nor did she rush him. She sat back down opposite him and held the cup to drink alone. She didn't know what he was looking at. It seemed like he had been looking at the words on the title page. There weren't many words. She had read it yesterday. On the title page of the book were the last words of a famous German doctor who had dedicated his life to the operating table. It could be considered the preface of the book. That German doctor had many achievements and accomplishments in the history of medicine in recent years. He could be considered one of Shirnian's idols. However, he had passed away a few years ago. This book was published more than 10 years ago. Right now, it was just a reprinted version. Whether it was the previous version or the current reprinted version, she had read them all, so she knew what he was reading now. Chin Sighting seemed to be reading very seriously. As Shirnianj drank the fruit tea, she raised her eyes to look at him. She saw that he had finally put down the book, but he did not return it to its original position. Instead, he shifted his gaze away from the book and looked at her. "Can I take this book back to read?" Chapter 1487. Ah. This book. Shirnianj was stunned. "This book, is it medical?" Chin Sighting nodded and picked up the cup of fruit tea by his hand to take a sip. He seemed to be very satisfied with the taste and took another sip. Seeing that he liked it, Shirnianj felt that she should tell Auntie Xiang tomorrow to make more and put it in the fridge. This way, Chin Sighting could still drink it when he came. He had an injury on his hand and was very satisfied with her bandaging. Perhaps he would come again tomorrow. "If you want to read the book, take it back. Anyway, I borrowed it from the provincial library. We can return it together in 2 days." As she said this, she felt that her words were not bad. She even gave them a chance to go to the library together again. In her heart, she silently praised herself for being a clever little girl. Chin Sighting glanced at the clever little girl in front of him and did not say anything else. He did not seem to feel much about the passage of time, but Shirnianj was worried that he would leave immediately after every conversation ended. But it was already so late. How long could she stay? Almighty Chin, tonight's self-study session ended a little early. I still have 2 sets of papers to finish. You haven't done the homework I copied for you, have you? Look at my poor grades. Coincidentally, I have nothing to do right now. Why don't the 2 of us do our homework together? If I don't know the questions, you can teach me. Shirnianj's expression was sincere. In fact, when she said this, she was a little nervous. After all, it was already so late. Chin Sighting glanced at the time. It seemed that he had only ended his evening self-study session at 9:00 every day. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with the 2 of them doing homework together so late at night. He answered, "Sure, go ahead." Nianj had never been so proactive and happy to do her homework. Without any hesitation, she rushed to bring her bag over. Although this small bar counter was not big, it was enough for the two of them to sit opposite each other and do their homework. She was definitely too embarrassed to call him to the study. It was already late at night, and the two of them were alone. At least, this was the living room. There was a floor-to-ceiling window opposite, and it looked quite open. If they went into the study together, she would be so distracted that she wouldn't be able to do her homework in the quiet, shrunken space. She glanced at his hand again and took out his homework from his bag. She placed it in front of him and gave him a look that signaled for him to begin. Enchanting picked up the pen and looked at her again. Usually, the two of them sat at the same table. Although they sat very close to each other, they sat sideways after all. Now that they were facing each other, as long as they moved slightly, they would be able to see each other's eyes. This feeling was really too exciting and nervous. Sensing his gaze, Nianj lowered her head and pretended to do her homework seriously. And when she thought about how she had personally copied some of the questions in his homework for him, she felt that the atmosphere was magical and intimate. The surroundings were too quiet, and the questions on the paper were too difficult. Nianj gradually focused her attention on her homework. In the air, she could only hear the occasional rustling of their pens. The questions were difficult, and there was a lot of homework. Time passed bit by bit. When she reached the last question on the last paper, Nianj finally raised her sore neck from lowering her head. She raised her eyes and saw that Enchanting had already finished writing. He sat opposite her and did not speak. It seemed like he was watching her write. Her face instantly heated up. "Look at how long I've been doing my homework." "Not long," Enchanting said calmly. "But it's only been 20 minutes. I can tell that your way of solving the questions is still the same as in the second year of high school. Your way of thinking hasn't changed." When Nianj faced this top student, she was used to her bad grades. Hearing his words, her face did not turn red nor did she pant. "Then did I answer correctly?" "The answer is correct." "That's good. Teacher Zhao also said that my train of thought can't keep up with everyone, but thankfully, I can answer correctly in the end using the simplest method. After all, the college entrance examination mainly depends on the answers. There are so many papers, and the teacher won't check my train of thought one by one. No matter how rigorous my train of thought is, it won't add any points." As she spoke, she lowered her head and continued to solve the last question. She had indeed written all the questions correctly, but her speed was very slow. When she finished, she saw that Enchanting's gaze was still on her paper, patiently watching her write. Nianj immediately felt as though her heart had been splashed with wine. It was hot and burning. She pinched the pen in her hand and then put it down. "All right, I'm done." She then glanced at the time. It was 10:30 p.m. Enchanting was actually at her house. He had yet to leave at 10:30 p.m. "It's already so late," she muttered softly. "I've finished my homework. I've drunk the fruit tea and wrapped my hands." Enchanting slowly counted the reasons she had tried to make him stay. "Can I leave now?" Nianj looked at him. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't dare to. In the end, he didn't give her a chance to ask him to stay for the night. He put the German doctor's book into his bag, put on his black shoulder bag, and left. Nianj thought to herself that her place was very big. There were several guest rooms on the upper and lower floors. If he wanted to avoid suspicion, he could sleep in a guest room further away from her room. It was already so late. What time would it be if he went back? However, Enchanting did not give her a chance to speak and left just like that. She quickly got down from the bar counter and quickly followed. Almighty Chin Sighting had already walked to the door. He glanced back at her. It's getting late. Take a shower and sleep early. She swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Suddenly, she didn't have the courage to say it. She really wanted to say, just sleep here for the night. We'll go to school together tomorrow. However, when the words reached her mouth, she still said, all right. Then you have to take care of your hands. Don't touch the water when you go back to shower. He answered, pushed the door open and left. Seeing his back view disappear outside the villa, Nianj stood in front of the door and watched his back view. She pursed her lips, feeling reluctant to part with him. Chin Sighting did not turn back. If they walked out of the small path of Lishui Villa, it would be the main road. It would be easy to get a taxi. She did not need to worry about him going home alone. After all, she was not a girl who needed to worry. However, when she closed the door and looked back at the empty living room, she then looked in the direction of the bar counter and felt her heart tighten. However, she knew that even if she really spoke, Chin Sighting would not stay. Chapter 1488. Right now, Nianj was not even in the mood to shower or sleep. She sat on the sofa and turned on the television in a daze. She was not sleepy at all. Chin Sighting had already left for 5 minutes. He should have already hailed a taxi. She leaned against the sofa, supporting her chin with her hand as she sighed. All of a sudden, her phone vibrated. She sat up straight, picked up her phone, and opened it to take a look. It was a message from Chin Sighting. Chin Sighting, rest early. Girls live outside by themselves. Don't easily ask anyone to stay overnight. You have to learn to protect yourself. Nianj held her phone and stared at it for a long time. Her heart, which had been messing around for a long time, finally calmed down. He could tell that she had been wanting to say something all night and could also tell what she meant. He definitely wouldn't think too much about it, but he was thinking for her, so he didn't give her a chance to speak. Chin Sighting. He was poisonous. How could she quit when she was so fond of her? She smiled and replied, "Good night." Then she stopped thinking about it and got up to go back to her room to shower and sleep. The next day, when Nianj saw Chin Sighting walking over under the tree, she immediately looked at his hand. She saw that the gauze on his hand was wrapped well and was still the same as last night. She could tell that it had not touched water and was clean. During class during the day, she would occasionally pay attention to his hand. When he wanted to take something, she would be the first to stand up and help him take it. During lunch, Zhao Xiaoqing clicked her tongue and said that she was deeply in love and couldn't extricate herself. She didn't know when Almighty Chin would give her a response. Nianj didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he was injured now, so she wanted to help him do something. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be able to interfere. In the afternoon, Nianj saw that Chin Sighting had not moved his hand all day. He was placing his left hand on the table and slowly picking up the papers. She glanced at it and said, "The wound hasn't healed yet. Bear with it. If you keep moving, you won't like it. Then you'll have to wrap it for many more days." Nianj smiled at him. "I told Auntie Xiang to make some food before she leaves tonight. Don't eat at school tonight. Anyway, school ends early today. When you go to my place tonight, try the soup Auntie Xiang made. It's delicious." Chin Sighting turned his head to look at her. Nianj smiled at him. Chin Sighting looked at her with sincerity. Seeing that he did not speak, she thought that it was too abrupt to ask him to go. She quickly said, "Your hand has to be changed every day." Aren't you going to go to my place to bandage it? If you don't go, you have to remember to go to the hospital to bandage it. If you... Tang, Sighting nodded. Chi, he said. Sighting. Question mark. Ah. Tian. Shi Nian's breathing stopped. She really wanted to grab his hand and shake it. She wanted to ask him, Almighty Qin, are you awake? 4. Shiped. Been. 4, I been, have been for long. School ended at 8 in the evening again. This time, the two of them did not have to walk so far. They took a taxi outside the school and returned to Lishui Villa. Shi Nianj didn't eat that night. She didn't know if Qin Sighting had eaten, but she remembered that he only went out to buy a bottle of water during dinner break. It had only been 10 minutes. He probably hadn't eaten. Thus, when they arrived home, they saw that Auntie Xiang had already left. However, there were still various dishes and soup that had just been prepared in the kitchen. They were all kept warm and could be eaten directly. The first thing she did when she entered was, of course, to bandage his wound. Seeing that she was becoming more and more professional, Qin Sighting sat at the small bar counter yesterday and allowed her to do as she pleased. After wrapping it for an entire day, the bleeding had already stopped. Thankfully, the weather today was not particularly hot. The wound did not flare up because it had been wrapped. However, Shi Nianj had forgotten to buy new gauze, so when she wrapped it for him today, she specially wrapped it twice less than yesterday. She tried her best to keep the wound on his palm in a better ventilated state. After wrapping it up, she went to the kitchen to get the bowls and chopsticks. She took out all the dishes that Auntie Xiang had cooked and brought them to the table one by one. All right, let's eat. She smiled as she placed the cutlery on both sides of the dining table. When Qin Sighting really sat down to eat with her, Shi Nianj picked up her chopsticks to pick up some food. At the same time, she seemed to inadvertently raise her eyes to look at him. She silently asked herself in her heart, when did they start to get so close and intimate? She couldn't tell when it started, but it was gradually getting closer and closer. Bit by bit, it had reached today's state. Was it a friendship between deskmates? Or, was it deeper, as she thought? After dinner, she planned to continue doing her homework with Qin Sighting, just like yesterday, but her mother suddenly called. Although her parents usually didn't have much time to accompany her, they would chat with her on the phone. Under normal circumstances, she didn't dare to ignore Madame Yangjinjin's call. She could only ask Qin Sighting to sit on the sofa and wait for her for a while. Then, she was afraid that her mother would know that she had brought the boy she liked home. She would definitely nag her again and fly back from abroad overnight. To be safe, she ran back to the bedroom to pick up the phone. On the phone, she told her mother about school and life for the past few days. Madame Yangjinjin did not forget to ask how her development with the boy she liked had been recently. Shi Nianj was in a difficult position. She wanted to lie, but she felt that she couldn't. However, if she didn't lie, the person she liked was at her home. In the dead of the night, she had just had dinner with her and was waiting for her to come downstairs to do her homework. She couldn't say it. She simply sat in the room and told her mother everything to make her mother feel at ease. In the beginning, her mother didn't believe her. Based on her mother's intuition, she felt that something was hidden. However, after chatting for a while, she realized that Shi Nianj had always been very reassuring. Although she was young, she wouldn't lose her rationality in relationships. In the end, she decided not to ask. In the end, Shi Nianj ended the call with the excuse that she hadn't done her homework. The call lasted for a full 20 minutes. She quickly put down her phone and ran out. When she went downstairs, she wanted to call Qin Sighting and say that she was here. She could do her homework now. She had been waiting for a long time. However, just as she ran to the corner of the stairs on the first floor, she suddenly saw that Sighting had fallen asleep on the back of her sofa. His head was raised, and his hand was resting on the sofa. He was quiet. Nian's voice was stuck in her throat. She couldn't believe that he had actually fallen asleep in her house. She quickly lightened her footsteps and quietly walked over. Then, he slowly raised his head awkwardly and met his gaze. I didn't do it on purpose. Nian was so embarrassed that she wished she could turn back time. Seeing that he had indeed been woken up by her, she quickly put on an apologetic smile. When she realized that her hands were still pressed against his arms, she quickly retracted her hands and quickly retreated from his arms. Then she quickly took several steps back, maintaining a distance of at least 3 meters. Sighting didn't know if he had suddenly been woken up from his sleep or if something had happened. He was still sitting there in the same posture, but his gaze landed on her quickly retreating body and then at her face. I really didn't mean to wake you up. Nian quickly pointed at the other pillow on the other side of the sofa. I saw that you were asleep and wanted to help you put the pillow behind you, but I was afraid of waking you up, so I stood by the side and hesitated. Who knew that your originally well-placed leg would suddenly stretch forward? I tripped and lost my footing, so, what time is it? He changed from leaning against the back of the sofa to a normal sitting position on the sofa, as if nothing had happened. Nian quickly looked at the time. It's past 9, at this moment, Sighting had already picked up his phone and looked at the time. It was indeed past 9. Nian was a little worried that he would leave immediately after waking up. She quickly changed the topic and said, Do you want to do your homework now? I called my mother for too long and made you wait for so long. If I had known you were so tired, I would have. It's fine. Go ahead. Sighting stood up. Because of his actions, the distance between them had shortened by at least 10 centimeters. Nian subconsciously took half a step back. He glanced at her because of her half a step back. What's wrong? Nothing. Do your homework. As she spoke, she recovered her expression and rushed to the small bar counter to get the papers. Since he asked this, it meant that he did not take the matter of her pouncing on him seriously. This indeed made her feel less awkward, but thinking about it, did he not feel a little, at all? Could it be that he treated her as a brother? At the very least, she was still a girl. When she pounced on him, it was as though nothing had happened. Although it could indeed make her feel less awkward. That night, she kept her head down to write the papers, but she was absent-minded. She answered several questions wrongly. When she raised her eyes, she saw that Sighting was almost done. He really didn't take it to heart at all. The speed of her homework was not affected at all. Nian shrugged her head. Her heart was filled with thoughts, and the more she wrote, the more confused she became. In the end, she put down her pen and stopped writing. However, just as she put down her pen, Sighting was still writing his paper. Without raising his head, he calmly said, The first page's 3rd question, the 7th question, and all the questions on the 2nd page's lower left half. Do it again. Nian. She looked at him in surprise. Did you see that I answered wrongly? He did not answer. Without raising his head, he said, Do it again until it's right. Oh, she answered gloomily and in a daze. She obediently went to write again. As she was writing slowly today, she had to write again many times. Although she tried her best to be serious, she was still a little absent-minded. Sighting did not rush her, nor would he easily tell her the answer. He only occasionally mentioned a few things about solving the problem. There was quite a lot of homework today. In the end, she finally wrote everything correctly. The clock was already 11:50 p.m. When Chin Sighting was here, she always felt that time passed especially quickly. She did not realize that it was so late. When she picked up her phone to look at the time, she was shocked. It's almost midnight. She was surprised. Chapter 1490. N. After responding, he took her paper to check and put it down. All right, I'll go back first. Oh. She nodded gloomily. This was because the message he had sent last night clearly indicated that no matter how late it was, he would not easily stay at a girl's house. Furthermore, it was all for her own good. She would not unconsciously think of anything else. Other than nodding, she did not know what to say. However, she was still a little worried after writing so late today. When he was about to leave, she walked over and asked, "Are you still coming tomorrow night?" Chin Sighting turned back to look at her. "I mean, you wrote so late today. When you go home and clean up, it'll probably be very late by the time you go to bed. Coming to my place might affect your normal schedule. After all, I'm too slow at doing homework." She paused. "So, are you still coming tomorrow?" Chin Sighting did not answer at first. Then he raised his hand to look at his bandaged hand and gently shook it in the air. "Depending on the degree of healing, I'll come if I still need to apply medicine and bandage it." Sure, Nianj knew that he would come to her house. Of course, the premise was that she had helped him bandage it. She quickly nodded. "All right, then I'll ask Auntie Xiang to prepare dinner tomorrow. What do you like to eat? Tell me at school tomorrow." "It's too late now. I'll call Auntie Xiang tomorrow." Chin Sighting smiled and did not say more. He waved his hand, indicating that he was leaving, and then left the door. Sure, Nianj turned back to look at the sofa not far away. She recalled the scene when he leaned against the back of the sofa and she pounced on him. She had actually pounced on him. What would Chin Sighting think of her back then? Although she had explained later, he had always known that she liked him. Would he think that she did it on purpose? That she wanted to do that to him, she really didn't do it on purpose. It was all his fault for being tall and long. She did not expect him to suddenly stretch his legs forward. Sure, Nianj quickly raised her hands to press her cheeks, trying her best to reduce the heat. However, her heart was still pounding non-stop. The smell on his body was really nice. Liking a person made her feel that even his fingers that held the pen seemed to emit magic. Not to mention that she had thrown herself at him. She, Sure Nianj, had actually been in Chin Sighting's arms for a few seconds. The wound on Chin Sighting's hand healed rather quickly because she really put in a lot of effort to bandage it. In less than 4 days, he no longer needed to bandage it. As long as he paid attention to disinfecting it every day, it would be fine. However, even if he didn't need to bandage it anymore, he still went to her house for a few days. It was great. Chin Sighting accompanied her home every day and only left after he finished his homework. This relationship actually lasted for a week. It was getting closer and closer to the college entrance examination. This week, the teacher began to strictly control the evening self-study session. The time for the evening self-study session was changed from 8 to 10 o'clock. Sure enough, even if third-year students were as tired as dogs, they still had to listen to the teachers and the school's arrangements. Originally, she was used to doing homework at home with Chin Sighting after school every day. Suddenly, she had to study in school for so long. Sure, Nianj was resistant, but thankfully, Chin Sighting was her desk mate. In fact, she could sit by his side from morning to night every day. However, the atmosphere at home was completely different from being alone in school. On Wednesday morning, everyone returned from their morning exercises. Shirniange stood up to get herself a glass of water. When she returned to her seat, the male desk mate at the front table turned back and said to her, "Earlier, Lin Su placed a few books on your desk. There's also a small bag for me to hand to you." Before Shirniange could speak, she saw a beautiful gift bag placed on her desk. Zhao Xiaoqing pouted at her from behind, as though she had discovered something incredible. Shirniange was somewhat confused. She glanced at the books on the table. They were all revision books for third-year students that she could use recently. She opened them and flipped through them. She found that the main points had been drawn. It was clear that the class monitor, Lin Su, had personally drawn them page by page. She picked up the small bag and opened it. It was a transparent white crystal doll that girls had been especially fond of recently. It was clean, translucent, and cute. The label on the bottom was that it was a flagship store of a crystal brand in Hong Kong. What was this? She put down the crystal doll, picked up the books, and flipped through them. Then she saw a piece of paper fall out. It landed on the ground. At this moment, Qin Siding walked back, and the piece of paper landed by his feet. Seeing her turn back, he realized that the paper was hers. He bent down and picked it up for her. His gaze naturally swept across the contents. Shirniange did not know what was written on it. She only saw Qin Siding take a look and did not say anything. Instead, she turned her gaze to the class monitor, Lin Su, who was sitting in the front seat. Why was Qin Siding suddenly looking at him? Shirniange blinked at Qin Siding. He did not speak and placed the piece of paper on the table. She quickly picked it up and saw that there was a boy's beautiful handwriting on it. "Nian Nian, I know that after you skipped a grade, you've been feeling pressured by the third year of high school. I've drawn many important questions that you're prone to make mistakes in the recent mock exams. Take a look. I hope we can get into the same university. Also, my cousin went to Hong Kong a few days ago. When she came back, she brought me some small gifts. I saw that the crystal doll was very cute and suitable for you, so I gave it to you. I hope you'll be happy every day. Lin Su, who hopes to meet you in the same university in a few months' time." After Shirniange finished reading, she put down the note in her hand. This kind of letter that looked like a confession, but it wasn't exactly a confession. It didn't seem to be a confession, but it was clearly a confession. Should she reply? Furthermore, with so many books, it was obvious that the class monitor had slowly and seriously helped her draw them. If it was the crystal doll, she could return it, but she couldn't pretend that she didn't see these people who stayed up all night to help her draw the important points in the books. Right now, everyone was very busy, and the time they could squeeze out was all used to revise. Even if she didn't have that kind of feelings for the class monitor, she couldn't ignore it. Just as she was hesitating on how to resolve this matter, Qin Siding's voice rang in her ears. "Sit down." She abruptly returned to her senses and realized that she had been standing in his seat. He was standing by the side. Earlier, he hadn't said anything, but the bell had already rung. She was still standing there without moving. She quickly returned to her seat. When she saw Qin Siding sit down, she quickly stuffed the note back into the books. Chapter 1491. Seeing that she carefully stuffed the piece of paper back into the book, Qin Siding indifferently glanced at the extra books on her desk. "Aren't you going to study medicine?" he suddenly asked. Shirniange turned to look at him because of his sudden question. It seemed like he rarely spoke after class. He usually didn't speak much. Now that the teacher was standing on the podium, he suddenly asked her. Although his voice was not loud, only she could hear it. Lin Su won't major in medicine. I'm afraid the agreement of you meeting in the same university won't be fulfilled, he said expressionlessly. Sure Nianj, she didn't agree to this agreement. She glanced sideways at him, wanting to know his expression. However, he was still expressionless. She then looked at the books on the table. Sure Nianj suddenly moved closer to his side and whispered, Almighty Qin, it's time to return the books I borrowed from the provincial library. Let's find time to return them together in the next 2 days. Coincidentally, help me find a few revision books. Even if I want to study medicine, I have to deal with the college entrance examination. Qin Siding did not speak at first. A moment later, he said, the weekend. All right, then let's go together this weekend. Sure Nianj almost laughed out loud. Was she thinking too much? Could it be that he took offense just now? If he minded, he could have said it directly. However, Sure Nianj did not have the leisure to play with other people's feelings. The class monitor was quite a good person. He was very upright and had a good personality. There were many girls in the class who liked him. She could not delay his youth and good time to date. After the next class, she quickly returned the things to him. The class monitor, Lin Su, saw that she had returned them all. Without asking, he knew her attitude. He glanced at her and asked, because of Qin Siding. Sure Nianj looked at him and did not nod or shake her head. She only smiled. Class monitor, thank you. I'm very sorry I didn't appreciate your kindness. Seeing that she did not answer directly, Lin Su smiled. Forget it. I've long seen that you've been guarding that piece of ice. You must like him. Now it seems like it's true. Sure Nianj did not explain. She only looked at him. Don't be angry, class monitor. Right now, studies are more important, right? Look, we're all single now. Lin Su was not a person with low EQ. He knew that she was helping him find a way out. Okay, I got it. Go back and guard that block of ice of yours. I can't reform you. I just don't know when you can melt that block of ice. After saying that, Lin Su directly put the books and the small bag back into his desk. Obviously, he did not want other passers-by to see it. A simple gift was returned. It was so embarrassing. Sure Nianj giggled and chatted with him for a long time. This matter was finally resolved without hurting each other's face. She returned to her seat. Qin Siding had just gone out with the teacher, and his seat was empty. Behind them, Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Xiaoqing seemed to be quarreling. Don't talk to me. Zhao Xiaoqing rolled her eyes at Hao Xiuxia. Then she saw that Sure Nianj had returned and said to her, Nian Nian, let me tell you, in the future, if this damn fatty dares to kick your chair again, squeeze him back and squeeze him into the corner. He takes up too much space. Sometimes, I feel that if the space is bigger, I won't even be able to write on the chair. Forget it. When did I push the table so far away? It's clearly because you're small and your arms aren't long enough. You're already 18 and not even 1.6 meters tall. How dare you say I'm fat? Hao Xiuxia refused to be outdone. Look at how far you pushed the chair back when I wrote a word. You keep saying that it's crowded. Don't you think about it? With such a big distance, it can fit your flesh. How am I supposed to write? Ever since I became deskmate with you, I've lost 5 kilograms. What else do you want? The two of them spoke one after another, and their expressions were filled with anger. Sure Nianj was amused. The two of them usually bickered, but today, their expressions were so serious. It seemed like they really had a conflict. However, the bell had already rung, so she could not ask anything. She sat down and turned back to see that Zhao Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia were still ignoring each other. She turned her head and did not speak. When Qin Siding returned, Shi Nianzhi leaned close to him and whispered, "We quarreled at the back table earlier." Qin Siding did not look back. He only lowered his eyes to look at her because of her approaching posture. She thought that he would ignore such a boring topic, but he replied, "N." Shi Nianzhi asked again, "Will we quarrel?" Qin Siding answered again, "No." These two words made her extremely happy. She was so happy that she wanted to continue speaking, but after all, it was already time for class. She quickly sorted out her emotions and sat down properly. However, she was in a good mood for the entire class. Before the afternoon self-study session, Zhao Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia were still arguing with each other. One said that the other was a short and thin little bean curd, while the other said that the other was a strong and fat bear. Neither of them was willing to give in to the other. Shi Nianzhi turned back and tried to mediate. However, after she said a few words, the two of them turned their heads and did not speak. Difficult. It was really difficult. What was there to argue about? In the past half a month, Shi Nianzhi's results were not bad. In any case, if she wanted to study medicine, she would definitely be able to pass the minimum score. Qin Siding was still so steady. In the 3 years of high school, no one could beat him in scores. A top student was indeed a top student. Perhaps Shi Nianzhi had made the right choice when she chose to sit by his side. She was a second-year high school student who had skipped a grade. In less than a year, her grades had really improved by leaps and bounds. The homeroom teacher, Teacher Zhao, was also very satisfied. Therefore, when he saw Shi Nianzhi and Qin Siding going to and from school together, he maintained a state of turning a blind eye. After all, these two little ancestors' backgrounds were too big to afford to offend. After returning home with the results of the mock exam, Shi Nianzhi looked at her score that had soared compared to a few months ago and felt very satisfied. Then she picked up the report card and looked at the 3 words, Qin Siding, who was ranked first. She was even more satisfied. Why was her deskmate so amazing? Why was the person she liked so good? She picked up her phone and suddenly wanted to send Qin Siding a message. It seemed like it had been a long time since the two of them had texted. That time, after he came to her house for a week, he did not come again after his hand injury healed. After that, although they still walked together at school and could talk in class, they rarely sent messages. She suddenly missed him. Shi Nianzhi lay on the sofa and wrote and deleted on her phone. After a long time, she finally sent a message, "Where are you?" Qin Siding did not reply to this message. After waiting for a long time, she did not receive a reply. Shi Nianzhi put down her phone, took a deep breath, and turned to look outside. It was early May. It was raining again. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.